Ferrario are broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Chasing it down is Cam Fowler. Blues left to right and in the home darts. Puck turned over by Fowler to Stone. Shoots and scores. Stone strips it away from Fowler in the slot. The first shot on goal past Hofer. 1-0 Vegas, 19 seconds into the hockey game. Back at even strength, and that's a big early game kill for the Blues. Centered. Olofsson shoots, scores. Doesn't matter. 2-0 Vegas. 11:06 to go in the first period. Puck gets loose to the neutral zone, and Holloway jumps on to it. Leaves it on the near wing. Kyrou with men in front. Score! There's the spark. Jordan Kyrou. Vegas drags it along the wing. They pass it through. Shoot and score. Dorofayev. Backdoor shot. Nothing Hofer could do. Buchnevich shot on. Rebound. They score! Robert Thomas with 3:26 to go. Puts in 5. Hole on Samsonov. And the Blues are within 1 and have a hope. Now to Shen. Back to Thomas. Tried to center it. Hurdle blocked that pass. Nicholas Waugh looking to clear. Blues hold it in, but the dump down low gets cleared out. And then it's turned over off the skate of Falk to Hurdle to the empty net. They score. Time will tick off. That's the third straight game the Blues have had to pick 4 goals out of their net.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Good to be back with you boys today. We do have Jordan Deacon back in the studio because we are broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. That was a rough one last night, Alex. No other way to put it. First 2 periods, looks like the Blues would rather be anywhere other than Enterprise Center, which is strange because you finally have an opportunity to actually play some home games here prior to this break. You got 3 right before the break, including 3 straight right now as well. So 6 of your next 8 are at home. And it looked like they were disinterested to play for 2 periods. Their shots, the vast majority of them either missed the net or never got to the net because they were blocked by somebody. The top line doesn't look like a top line right now, which is continuing to be a theme despite being reunited last night with Booch and Thomas together. I don't understand what we're watching, man. I know that this team, yes, we've said all along, this is an inconsistent squad. But this is when you needed to go on a little bit of a run. And I can live with them having a couple of bad bounces going against them and them losing the game last night, effectively 3-2. I can live with that. What I can't live with is when the team just looks lackadaisical and as if there is zero urgency. And you no longer have the excuse of, hey, we don't trust our coach. We don't believe in him. We're a poorly coached team. No, there's no excuses remaining in that regard. You're a well-coached team. Jim Montgomery is known nationally, hell, internationally, as one of the best coaches in the NHL. And he has called this team out publicly and privately for not showing the requisite amount of urgency at this point in the season. And they're still showing the same stuff. I want to buy in. I want to believe. Personally and professionally, it's more fun for them to win. It's better for us on a professional level when they win.
Yeah.
And yet, this is the product which makes it difficult for me to buy in. So, Alex, what'd you see last night? What do you make of it?
Okay, hear me out. This team's still a playoff team. Okay, I can't make that bet right now. We talk so much about how inconsistent they are, and I think when people hear that, they assume we're talking about the play on ice. And that's generally what we're talking about. They're inconsistent mentally, and that's what I felt last night. Joey said it on the post-game reaction, just saying, like, look, this looked like a team that from the jump didn't expect to win a hockey game. And 19 seconds in, which, by the way, is the 6th time this season that the Blues have given up a goal on the first shot by the opposition, that Cam Fowler turnover where Mark Stone scored, that's where it felt like, oh, bleep, we're done with this one. And it's a 4-2 loss, and they made it 3-2, but that score fools you because it could have been a 4-0 game. The push was in the final 5-6 minutes, and that's where they lack the inconsistency mentally because typically when teams go into a game like that, you're up for those types of games. It's your first home game back. You just beat Vegas. And even when you don't have your best, when you have sloppy play with the puck, like last night, was pretty obvious. They weren't getting the pucks out of their own end. but you expect...
You learned that pretty quickly,
You learned that, I thought, 19 seconds in when he made a pass right into the shins of Mark Stone, and Mark Stone's like, oh, thank you, and went into the back of the net. You would expect some type of push at one point. And the best time that the Blues really had life was when Jordan Kyrou scored the goal. But then from there, it was just a dud. Right now, the Blues are suffering from a couple of things. Lacking the consistency on the mental side of being engaged for every single game once that puck drops. Lacking confidence, as we saw when that Mark Stone goal went in last night, and they're not getting consistency from their best players. I mean, once again, they reunited Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich, which Jim Montgomery said afterwards they did it because they felt Pavel Buchnevich was flying. He had 2 shots on goal in the first 5 minutes of the game, and one of them was a near goal. It was just a nice pad save by Ilya Samsonov. But they were flying, and he said, okay, well, we need our top line. We need Buch. Buch has got his confidence back. Let's put him back with Thomas. From then on, that line did nothing. They ended the game with 1 shot on goal, and that 1 shot on goal came with Robert Thomas's goal with the goaltender pulled. Your defensemen were turning pucks over in their own end, and your goaltender, you needed a couple of saves. Like, from top to bottom, that felt like a game that you never really felt like the Blues were going to make a push.
Yeah, so much of this comes back to that top line. Like, we talked about it early on in the Jim Montgomery era where I remember saying, I pushed it out on social media. Hey, the Blues' top players are playing like they're top players under Jim Montgomery, and that's why you hired him.
Oh, so you did this then.
Yeah, this is on me. I apologize. They're not doing that anymore. Over the last 12 games, you can date back to that Buffalo Sabres game right before the Winter Classic. Pavel Buchnevich in those 12 games is a -5 on the ice. Robert Thomas is a -7 on the ice. Now, if you look at the points, they're putting up some points. Thomas has 8 points in his last 12 games. Buch has 8 points in his last 12 games as well. But you're not feeling the impact on the ice. They just look like they're gliding through the game. This is the typical criticism that is reserved specifically for number 25 out on the ice. Well, let's go ahead and apply it to the guys that it actually applies to right now, which is Thomas and Buch. They're gliding through these games, having seemingly no real impact. And yes, I understand Thomas had the goal. The game was over at that point in time, and they had already put themselves in such a hole that it's like, hey, who's the arsonist? Oh, he put out the fire? Cool.
Yeah, well, you can't have a push in the final 6 minutes of a game where you have a total of 8 shots on goal. Like, you have that, it's
too little, too late.
And what it does is it gives a false sense of security of like, hey, we can get back into any hockey game, which is a good thing to have, but you can't play the way that you did in the first 2 periods and say, well, we can get back into this one. Steve Ott had said it after the game with Kerbs and Joey when they asked, like, hey, what happened with the lack of offense? And he said, we just had terrible puck decisions in terms of areas. We opted to not shoot in the high danger areas when the other team, every single time they had the puck in the zone, they took shots. There was hesitation, which you saw on the pucks that were getting picked off in their own end of passing it, and then there was hesitation to shoot the puck. Now, they hit a couple of posts, but when you're not opting to shoot in every single situation like you had been doing, and when you're not winning 50-50 puck battles, Vegas had 2 guys on every single loose puck to where the Blues were kind of like, oh, it'll come to us at some point. You're not going to win.
I think it was after the game last night that Monty said, hey, we won like 30% of our puck battles in that second period, and that's ultimately where the game was lost.
Yeah.
Dude, all of this stuff sounds so familiar. We've been talking about this stuff for 3 years, man. This is not new. None of these things we're bringing up, the lack of urgency, the puck battles, putting pucks into the wrong areas, like all of this stuff is stuff that continues to crop up for the same dudes for years. This is not new. It feels like Groundhog Day around here, and it always feels like it comes back up around this time of the year. Where it's like, hey, they've kind of put themselves in position to go on a run here if they can avoid this stuff again, and then we suddenly are surprised when they end up falling into the same pitfalls that they've had for, again, years under different coaches with different supplementary pieces, but the same core group of players. The only thing that's different right now is 25 is not the whipping boy. It's the top guys.
Yeah, it's 18 and 89. That's become the whipping boys for the Blues.
Yeah, and that's what has been so frustrating is, you're right, it does feel like Groundhog Day. Like, think back to their last 3 losses in these games. You know, you have the loss last night to Vegas. You had a close loss back on January 11th to the Blue Jackets 2-1, and you lost 4-2 to Utah Hockey Club. You know what happened in all 3 of those games and those losses? You didn't leave those games feeling great about them, right? And it's not just because they lost. It's because you didn't feel like they showed up to the game. Columbus, they had a decent first period. Second period, they just got crushed. And they ended up out shooting them. But it was because, again, what you're talking about, another late third period surge. it's back to the issues we had with them last year, 2 years ago of, hey, the same core, if you will call it that, they don't show up when it matters the most, right? This is such an important stretch of hockey for this Blues team, not because it's, hey, there's 30-plus games left in the season. You guys got to get to the deadline and prove you're worth investing in. Yeah. And right now, they're not worth investing in. If I'm Army right now sitting up in his press box in his office, I'm looking at this team going, I mean, we don't have much to sell. I guess we're just sitting pat right now. I'm not going to put more into this club when we can't go on a run and catch the Calgary Flames.
All right, so you got to show some urgency. Last night, I think the coaching staff tried to do that by being like, you know what, we got to go back to that top line. Booch and Thomas, you're going back out there together. Alex, the one thing they can really do to change up the combinations on their forward line, and we got to get to Mike McKenna here in just a moment. We'll do that here in just a few minutes, but I do want to play something from Jim Montgomery post-game last night.
Yeah.
The one thing they have left, the one button they can still push, is breaking up that Holloway, Shin, and Kyrou line. They're hesitant to do so, understandably, but here's what Jim Montgomery had to say yesterday about that possibility after the game.
It's hard to break up a line that's scoring every game, you know? I think the rest of our lineup has to raise their level to the level that line's playing at.
That's what I would say as well. I wouldn't break them up because, hey, man, it's not about them. It's about the other guys not coming together. We've got talent out there. They're just not performing. Alex, is it time to start considering that in your opinion? And if not, what can you do to raise the level of the other three lines?
Yeah, not yet, because he's right. Like, he said when they broke up Thomas and Buchnevich originally, he said, like, why I'm splitting them up is I need these guys to realize that they can't rely on their line mates to help get the job done. They've got to do it, and then the line mates are there to assist. And the moment you break up that line, you're kind of babying your top players to say, well, we'll give you somebody who can work better. No, you got to figure it out yourself because your top players, you should be doing this. I'm not there yet. At some point, you might have to be, though, because as much as you love that top line, they've got points in 5 straight and 10 of their last 11 games. But you also have to have Thomas and Buchnevich performing. I'm not even going to say recommend because it's a little Tony. What I would like to see is put Bolduc up there. And I know it probably isn't going to be pretty because Bolduc is young, but you've tried Saad, and it hasn't worked. You've tried Neighbors. It's okay, but it's not to the same level that you need it. There's no other options to go through with players that are in the game. You're not going to put Joseph up there. You're not going to put Toropchenko up there. You're not going to put Walker up there. Put Zach Bolduc up there. Because what if we talked about with the lines that work, a pure goal scorer with a guy who hounds pucks, and then your playmaker. And that's what Zach Bolduc is. Guys, he's like a +9 on the season when he's played. I don't love it. Frankly, I think it might be a roller coaster ride, but we freaking played Alex Texier up on that top line. And it didn't work out very well. So if you're going to play Texier up there, why not put Zach Bolduc up there, give it 5 games and say, just go out there. You're not even using them as the top line right now. Schen's line is the top line. They're the ones that are going out there with the matchups. You're on home ice. You get the best matchups you can ask for. Put Bolduc up there, and if that doesn't work, now you've exhausted all options. Now you might have to talk about breaking up Schenn.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Blues off tonight. Back in action tomorrow against the Dallas Stars. Things don't get any easier from here. Dallas, Vancouver, Colorado, Utah, Edmonton, Florida. The Blues are in a really difficult stretch of their season right now, and they've got to play up to these expectations. You have just about, 7 games left prior to this break, and then it's a push right up until the trade deadline where Doug Armstrong's going to be having to make some significant decisions. Coming up in about 15 minutes, is this the year that the Bills are finally going to break through? You might be surprised by my comments on that, but coming up next, Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie. He joins us each and every week here on BK and Ferrario. What does he make of the Blues' seemingly consistent ability to be inconsistent? We'll talk to him about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios. This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. We're going between the pipes with former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna.
How do you like me now?
Between the Pipes is refreshed by Macadoodle Spirits, fine wine, beer, and cigars. Now open in Darden Prairie.
All right, I feel like every week it's a little bit of a whack-a-mole with Mike McKenna on which version of the St. Louis Blues we're going to be discussing. One week it's, oh my God, this team's going to make the playoffs. The next week it's, woo, who are they going to be selling off at the deadline? And we get to do that with Mike McKenna via the Collier and Thompson hotline. He joins us each and every Friday here on the show. Mike, we appreciate the time as always, man. So who are you trading from this roster come 3 weeks from now?
Oh, yeah, fire sale. Get them all. Get rid of everybody. Fire sale. No, man. It's
easy, Pittsburgh Penguins. You can't just do that whenever you want, all right?
I tell you what, man, it is funny because, last week against Calgary Flames, you grab a couple of big wins. We talk on Friday. Then I'll drop one to Utah, and then, I managed to squeak one out in Vegas. This is the nature of a team that's still finding itself and still has players that are, young in their careers and are still trying to find magic scenarios. And, it's just a great reminder when the Blues go up against a team like Vegas, and when Vegas plays their best hockey, like you saw mostly last night, really what a championship caliber team looks like in the National Hockey League. That's what Vegas looked like last night, and St. Louis, unfortunately, did not for at least the better part of two periods, and by that point, it was pretty much all over going into the third.
And Mike, the crazy part for me is, I go back and look at those two Calgary Flames games. Calgary felt like they were an inferior opponent to the Blues. They made that top line look like a fourth line. Goaltending-wise, it didn't feel like Calgary was getting any saves while the Blues were getting all of the big ones. So when you look at the teams that they've beat up that they're around, Vancouver, Seattle, I'm going to omit Utah for a reason, they make these teams seem inferior, but then when they take on teams like this, they have their moments.
Yeah. Well, and the tough part, too, is when you see top lines not be able to get it done. That Stone-Eichel line just ate up Thomas's line when they were on the ice. And unfortunately, in the recent times, we've just seen too much of that. And it's been kind of surprising for me to see because, to me, Robert Thomas had turned into such a great two-way player, and I still believe that he is. I know how diligent he can be, but since the start of January, he's -6. And that's not normal. That's not the way it should be for a player like him. Now he's also getting the top matchups, but going against a line like Stone and Eichel, who are just so heavy on pucks and who are able to really create whatever they need in the neutral zone, it hasn't matched up well. The shining light, though, man, is that Holloway, Kyrou, and Shen have been unbelievable. It's just you need more of that, and you need two deadly lines at the top. And right now, it's really only been one for the Blues.
So, Mike, I'm glad you brought up that Robert Thomas line, because one thing that Joey was talking about on the broadcast last night was body language. And Robert Thomas this season, and even Pavel Buchnevich over these last few weeks, you've seen the frustration spill over on the ice. They miss a shot, they look straight up to the rafters. They miss a pass, they slam their stick. From a former NHLer's perspective, when you've got your top guys that are out there kind of portraying that bad body language when things aren't going well, how detrimental can that be to a team?
It can filter through. It can be endemic. It's at the very best situation, everybody looks at it and goes, "Come on." At the worst situation, it rubs off on people. And this really, to me, has always been the Achilles heel of Pavel Buchnevich. He gets frustrated. He doesn't score. The body language, the looking at the roof, it takes him a while to get out of it, And I do wonder in last night's game, what happens if he scores, I don't know, it was 5-6 minutes into the first period, a clean chance right in the middle of the ice, and he just pumped it right in Samsonov's crest, right in his chest. If he scores that goal, how's the game look different? How does his game look different? Unfortunately, we had a whole span last year. There was about 20 games where we were saying that about Pavel as well. And I think he's a great player, but I think that the mental aspect when he gets down on himself really makes it tough. Surprising part is that Thomas, to me, this is kind of a new thing for him. I'm a bit surprised to see it happen. And really, you look around, like, you got to be better than that, right? You're going to wear a letter on your jersey. You have to just be steely and go for it. And, a guy like Jonathan Toews is a great point. When you think about what Chicago was like, Captain Serious, man, that guy, you never saw that body language years ago when Chicago was winning cups. And that's the type of player you need to turn into as being a top center in the NHL. Is you just got to let it roll off your back and go down and get to business.
Do one of those veterans grab Robert Thomas and say something, or because he's been in the league long enough now, do you just kind of let it go and figure he'll figure it out?
Yeah, I'm surprised by that too. What's the right answer here? Like, I'm kind of surprised that, and again, we're not in the locker room. We really have no clue. I can't speak out of turn there, but
right.
It's at a point where, something's got to be said. If I always relate to what we do with squirts and peewees. If they're coming back to the bench and you're saying it, like, the coach is the ultimate hammer, but you're more embarrassed when it comes from a teammate. And that's where the leadership comes in. For all we know, Braden Shen told him repeatedly, and it's not changing anything. We don't know. And it's the hard part for us as fans to gather. I'm not as worried about that body language as I am just the way that they matched up against that team in Vegas last night in the first two periods. I mean, if you're going to play against a team like that, you just simply can't turn pucks over. You can't do it 20 seconds into a game against Mark Stone, who's the number one turnover player in the entire NHL. You got to know who you're on the ice against, and you got to be ready to play at home. And it didn't happen on home ice against the top team. I'm just glad that they keep filling the building down there at Enterprise because, the fans love this team, guys. We all want to see them do better. But laying an egg like that for two periods isn't going to help at all.
So I think the most difficult thing for this team, and we're talking to Mike McKenna as we do each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario, I think the most difficult spot, if I put myself into Doug Armstrong's shoes, is them remaining where they're at right now prior to the trade deadline, Mike, because as of today, you're a few points out of the wild card spot. Calgary is holding on to that thing, and they do have a few fewer games played than the St. Louis Blues. That's part of this as well. But if we get to, early March and you're 2-3 points back, what do you do if you're in Doug Armstrong's shoes?
Well, I don't think you add unless you're able to swing a big-time hockey trade. And if you can somehow pull it off to get a player that's going to make you better for 5-6 years, you do it. I don't think a fire sale is in order because who are they going to sell? I actually mean, if you could sell anybody on this team, who would you sell, right, in a trade?
Probably Saad, just because of the money plus the possibility of having more years of control on that.
Agreed, but there's trade protection, and frankly, what are you going to get for him? A player that's been healthy scratched doesn't have a lot of value. Mm-hmm. And so if you do, you're probably adding by subtraction. If you can move that contract, I do agree with you. That'd be one you would pinpoint right away. But beyond that, man, there's really just not a lot on this roster that you could possibly move on from unless you got something big in return. So I thought this all year that the Blues would be a bubble team. They'd be in the mix. They may not make playoffs. They might get close. I still consider that a win on the year, and I know that I'm approaching that from a more pragmatic standpoint than wanting to win immediately, which is a lot of folks. But I think you kind of have to stand pat and see if anything can happen towards the end of the season or towards free agency or even at the draft if you can make a move.
Mike, one area that I obviously want your expertise on is goaltending, of course, playing in the NHL and the American Hockey League as a netminder. And you know me, I always love to defend the goalies because, look, they got a tough job out there. But I was looking at this last night after Joel Hofer gave that one up off of the first shot. Blues have given up the first shot on goal 6 times this season. We've talked a lot about how Binnington and Hofer have made big-time saves for the team. But what stands out to you from this goaltending tandem over this last week or so?
Well, it doesn't help to allow the first one. That's always what you don't – that's the last thing of the goal. It's literally like, oh, God, they scored the first goal, or first shot, right? It's funny how nerve-wracking it can be when it happens, but so often that's been a shot that has been, a clean break or it's been a seeing eye shot. I'm not as concerned about it as that from the goaltending standpoint. I thought Hofer was really good last night. I thought he outplayed Samsonov, honestly. frankly, that should have been a 3-0 game. Those 2 goals on Samsonov are terrible. So if you want to watch goaltending that you don't want to have, listen, Jordan Kyrou had his head up and had a great shot, but he was 2 feet past the dot with 0 angle, and Samsonov was already down on one knee, exposing the whole far side off his angle, and that's been endemic to his game for the last 6-8 years. It's why Washington and Toronto both gave up on him. Like, this guy's been really lucky that he's been on 3 really good teams his whole career. And that second goal he never adjusted when Thomas banged it home. So you can compare and contrast those two. I think it's there for the Blues. It's just, sometimes they go through swells. I don't think Hofer's been poor. I think Benner's been better. But, their best ice and their best game is going to happen when the team in front of them isn't allowing as many rush chances, isn't allowing the low to high bumper play. How many shots did we see from the middle of the ice from the Vegas Golden Knights last night? High to low to bumper in the middle, like half dozen. How many rush chances? Again, I'm defending goalies here, but that's got to be limited to get the best out of your goalies, or else, Samsonov faces 23 shots a night and he allows 2, and he looks great. Well, no, those are bad goals. So I think they're in an okay spot. It just has to be better in front of them.
Mike McKenna is a former NHL goalie. He joins us each and every week here on BK and Ferrario, and he does so on behalf of Macadoodles. Mike, I see you over on your Facebook page. You guys have a big game bash coming up with Sugar Fire that you're doing as a wine and chocolate pairing. Potential tickets available for that. What else do you guys have going on over at Macadoodles right now?
We do. We have a wine and chocolate pairing coming in February 22nd. We just came off doing a wine and cheese pairing, which was a sold out. It was sold out, guys. 24 tickets, sold it out. It was organic wine and cheese. It was great, man. People came, had fun. We had all of it out on the tables in the back room. The big one, though, that we just announced is bourbon, beer, barbecue, and the big game. Because you can't advertise Super Bowl. Yeah. In fact, I think a bot out there right now might be going, oh, my gosh, they said Super Bowl. We better ping them here. Anyway, we're having a Super Bowl party at Macadoodles for the big game, and we're going to host it at Sugar Fire Wentzville, presented by Macadoodles. It's a $60 ticket. It's going to get you Sugar Fire Barbecue Buffet. It's going to get you a 1-ounce pour of Blanton Single Barrel. You're going to get 2 drink tickets for craft beers from Four Hands Brewing. That's all courtesy. It's all included in the $60. And there's 50 tickets to this thing, guys. We are raffling off 3 highly allocated, sought-after bourbons during the event. An E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof, a Four Roses Limited Edition 2024, and a 13th Colony Double Oaked. Those 3 are going to go to 1, 2, 3 people of the 50 that attend our event. They will win the raffle at the start of the fourth quarter. We're also going to have some other giveaways. There'll be a cash bar. Man, that's going to be fun. So we've got it all up on our socials. We've got the link to tickets there. Again, it's $60. There's 50 tickets total to it. Come on into Macadoodles. We got signage up everywhere, QR codes, and we're looking forward to it and seeing everybody at Sugar Fire Wentzville Reserve for the big game, also known as the Super Bowl.
Hey, you love to see it, but that's definitely not part of the advertising. Just the big game.
No,
part
the big game.
That's the advertising part. 1-ounce pour of Blanton's plus those raffle tickets, Alex. That alone, set aside.
I think I actually just saw you text your wife and say I'm unavailable this day.
The TVs to be able to go out and watch the big game. That alone is worthy of that $60.
You'll be after drinking a lot of that because when the Chiefs lose in the AFC Championship, you'll be drinking away your sorrows.
Mike, appreciate the time as always, my man.
Thanks, fellas. Have a good one.
See you, Mike.
That's Mike McKenna. Appreciate his time as always. If you want those tickets, by the way, you can go over to their Facebook page right now. Just search Macadoodles, Darden Prairie. If you check that out, it'll get you to their Facebook page. You can find out how to buy their tickets right over there. Super easy process. Again, $60 to be able to get that big game. They've got 3 TVs. They've got a Sugar Fire buffet, a 1-ounce pour of the Blanton Single Barrel, and then the 3 raffles for allocated bourbon, including E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof, which is one hell of a bourbon to be able to get potentially for a raffle. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get to Ask Us Anything. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You can get the questions in as well over on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up next, we got to talk about the NFL because this might be the year, finally, that the Bills break through. Does it need to be the year that they break through? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, the Blues lost to the Vegas Golden Knights by a score of 4-2. They're off today and back in action tomorrow night at Enterprise Center, welcoming in the Dallas Stars. Pre-game coverage starts at 5, and then puck drop is at 6, right here on 101 ESPN. I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. E&B Granite, Bernie Fedurko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
It's a huge week in the NFL, which is almost putting it too mildly. It's championship weekend. You got Champ Bash on Sunday. Go out there, hang out with the Fast Lane, the Riz Show. Alex and T-Bone are going to show some face as well. Enjoy yourself out there. Commanders-Eagles is the early game, and then the real, the prime event, so to speak. Bills versus Chiefs. Don't check my math on this, Alex, but I believe the 13th time in the last 12 years in the postseason.
Lucky number 13 for Patrick Mahomes.
Bills are 0-3. Straight up against the Chiefs in the playoffs. Josh Allen has not been able to break through just yet. And it is the one thing that Patrick Mahomes has on his resume that is really unique, even more so than what Brady did early in his career. Because Brady, yes, he did keep Peyton down, but he started 0-2 and then got Brady on the third try. And then, surprisingly, despite kind of the way that the narrative went, actually ended up having a winning record against Brady in the postseason over the course of his career.
But fraud. Brady's not that good.
Patrick Mahomes has done an excellent job of preventing Lamar or Josh from getting theirs. And it's the one real, scarlet letter on either of their resumes is they haven't been able to break through and get to the Super Bowl, much less win one. This feels like the year when that should happen. I think if you polled 100 people right now, just casual fans of the NFL, hey, who's the better team? Not who do you think is going to win on Sunday. Who is the better team right now between the Bills and the Chiefs? I think it'd be 60-40 Bills over the Chiefs. I think most people believe the Bills to be just neutral field. Who's the better team? They're the team. And yet, if you asked 100 people, you polled them the exact same thing, who do you think will win on Sunday? I think it might be reversed. 60% Chiefs, 40% Bills going into Sunday. And that's because of the history of these two teams in the postseason. Alex, do you think this is the year that the Bills actually break through?
I do. I think this is the moment that they feel vulnerable. And this is the time that I think the Bills can smell that vulnerability. And that's where you have to pounce. I don't disagree with you. If you don't get it done in this one, it's going to be tough because the Chiefs do not have Rashee Rice. Patrick Mahomes has not been his best. I don't know if that defense is as good as it's been in the past years that they've won the Super Bowl. Yes, they still have Travis Kelce, but he is much older. Yes, they have Chris Jones. Yes, they have Trent McDuffie. They've got stars on their team. But Buffalo is healthy. Buffalo feels like a well-oiled machine right now to where I don't really know where their weakest link is, to where I can point to the Chiefs and find certain areas where they are weak. This does feel like I don't want to say the last, because the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion, they're going to be back in the same spot next year, probably against the Chiefs. But this feels like the most opportune moment for them to get to the Super Bowl and finally get over that hump.
Yeah, I think they win this week. But
I do too.
The whole poll that you just said, I'm kind of in that, right? I think they are the better football team. And I am going to take the Bills this week. If we did a pick 'em, I would pick Buffalo.
Really?
Yeah, I would too.
I sit there and I pick Buffalo going, I can't believe I'm betting against the GOAT right now. I know that Mahomes is going to make me eat it, and I don't know how exactly.
That's where I'm at. I think that the Bills are the better team. I'm also in the poll. If I did that poll, I would be part of the 60% that believes that the Bills are better and 60% that believes that the Chiefs will win. And if you ask me, how do the Chiefs win this game? What does it look like? I don't know. Genuinely, I couldn't tell you. A lot of the time, I feel like we have a pretty good read, at least in this postseason, on how the game will be played. Even if it leads us to the wrong result overall, though we've been right on just about everything that's happened thus far, but not to pat yourself on the back. typically you can feel the type of game that's coming for a specific team to win. Like if the Commanders beat the Eagles, it will be because it's a high-scoring affair that the Eagles can't keep up with. If the Eagles beat the Commanders, I believe it's because the Commanders just couldn't move the ball the same way against the Eagles' defense, and so it becomes lower scoring, and the Eagles find a way to win like 23-17 or something like that. How do the Chiefs win this game? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. It could be 36-30. It also could be 17-13. I could see either style of game. It's so hard to know up front what this game is going to look like, which makes it incredibly difficult to prognosticate.
And you know what I'm having a tough time with? And this is what we've talked about. We mentioned this a little bit yesterday on the show when we talked about quarterbacks under pressure this weekend, and we were talking about this off air. Like, this does feel like the most vulnerable Chiefs team that Allen has run into. And yet, like, if they don't win, I don't feel like I'm going to panic about, oh, Josh Allen just missed his best opportunity. Because I don't feel like the Bills are built yet to be that team that you look at and go, they should be a Super Bowl contender, right? When we talked when the playoffs started about, like, what teams are all in, what teams need to get to the Super Bowl, the first teams we said were Lions, Eagles. To an extent in the AFC, we said the Baltimore Ravens who ended up going home. Like, the Bills were so far down on that list for me to where even if they do end up losing this weekend, I have a tough time looking at it going, well, Allen just missed his best shot. Because I just feel like it's a little unfair to say that of him when I just look at this group and I go, there's nobody outside Josh Allen that I look at and go, that guy could take over a football game for the Buffalo Bills. Meanwhile, I look at the Chiefs and I go, well, I can see Chris Jones is just in Allen's lap the entire game. Travis Kelce, yeah, he didn't have a great regular season. The dude found the fountain of youth once again in the playoffs.
There's a reason why.
Oh, Mahomes doesn't have great wide receivers. He just threw for 350 and ended up beating the Buffalo Bills.
So to me, this is a game of, is it about the weakest link, which would mean that the Chiefs lose, because the Chiefs have two of the weakest links in this game. The Bills have a ton of floor raisers on their roster. They have a lot of guys that are like, you look at their entire starting 22, and I don't think there are very many players in it that you would say below average next to their name. Like almost all of them are average to good. And then there's Josh Allen, who's amazing. But they don't have a lot of those legit blue chip talents. It's like Josh Allen, Deion Dawkins, who's their left tackle, end of list probably in terms of the legit elite level talents on their roster. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, you look at it, it's like, okay, who are the blue chip players? Well, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Travis Kelce, it's Chris Jones, it's Trent McDuffie. Those guys are all on that elite level at their respective positions. But on the inverse of that, their slot corner, Shamari Connor, is terrible. And the last time that these teams met was the guy that Josh Allen targeted relentlessly. And just said, hey, where's Waldo? Okay, 27, he's in the slot. I'm targeting whoever he's covering, whether that's Matt Collins or Khalil Shakir or Dalton Kincaid. It doesn't matter who's going into the slot. That dude's getting the ball on this play. Or if you end up looking on the other side of things, if you're Sean McDermott calling the defense going into this game, well, the left guard for the Kansas City Chiefs is there. Where's Waldo? That guy stinks. He's a backup who's going to be out there, and Ed Oliver's going to be lining up against him all day long. That could be the thing that does the Chiefs in. So that is one of my big questions going into this one is it about the floor raisers, or does the elite talent of the Kansas City Chiefs end up proving to be too much heading into this game? That is a huge determining factor. On what you said about this being the year, though, I am with you. I will not panic about the Bills because I think they're going to be right back here year, 2, 3 years down the road. And I think this might be the worst version of like this era of Bills football. I think you could say the same thing about the Chiefs, though, too. I don't think that their receivers are going to be as bad next year as they were this year. I think their offensive line is probably going to be better next year. I think they're going to try to find an answer at left tackle. This defense has one more year of like this core group of players being cheap with them because of that draft class that they were able to accumulate together with. So if you lose 4 straight in the playoffs, there's going to be that mental game where eventually the Bills will come into these types of games and say to themselves, same old Bills. You feel it again, right? You feel going into that series of like, what do we have to do to break through? So I do find this matchup to be really interesting, and if the Bills aren't able to break through this time around, I do wonder if it starts to become a mental game for them.
This is the one thing that I think I'm most fascinated by is how Sean McDermott is going to game plan for the 12th man on the field.
Okay, I'm not going to lie. For a minute, I didn't get where you were going.
BK didn't for a second either, and then he made that then he made that stupid look.
Got it as well.
I thought you were talking about the crowd.
Well, I'm just saying,
a roughing the passer penalty will put the Chiefs in a field goal range.
Like if you're talking about the left guard and Ed Oliver's going to line up, well, they better make sure they game plan not to touch him because if you blow near him, he's going to fall.
It's all because everyone thinks that the refs are going to help the Chiefs. Another person from the 3-1-4. Guys, be real. The Chiefs are going to win because they get lucky and the refs help because 80% of their games, that's what happens.
Yeah. And then, frankly, if I'm the Buffalo Bills, I'm not going to get down on myself. I just got to find a way to beat the Zebras.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, Sooner or later, they'll beat the man. They can't let Big Brother always win, right?
I hate you so much. Really genuine.
Yeah, maybe they'll
I'm glad I'm not going to be this year.
You know, in Replacements, when Gene Hackman puts Gorilla Glue, elephant glue on Clifford Franklin's hands so he doesn't drop the ball, maybe like Sean McDermott will sneak in and we'll call it like Flaggate, where they like super glue the flag to the referee's pants and they can't pull it. Be like, what's going on over here? Maybe we'll get there.
You want to wear referee outfits?
Oh, I'm so wearing referee outfits
to Champ Ash this weekend.
It would be funnier if I was there.
Yeah. Oh God, it would be. Why you ruin everything?
Sorry,
you
guys.
do ruin everything.
No,
man.
that's true.
JR's coming though. He's better than BK. We'll have JR dress up in the Chiefs outfit, and then we'll be the fan. Yeah, that's good.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Ask us anything next year on 101 ESPN.
from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios, this is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's Questions and Answers on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, get them in now. Fridays are the time to do it for the Ask Us Anything segment. All right, let's start out with this from the 314. Guys, would you agree with this? Whoever wins between the Chiefs and Bills will go on to win the Super Bowl.
Yes. I
agree.
And even if, and I'm like a huge Commanders honk right now, and I think they will beat the Eagles, I don't think either of those teams stand up against the Bills or the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think whoever wins the AFC Championship game is going to be the one that ends up winning it all. I think we've talked about this. The NFC playoff, the bracket was fun. A lot of teams that, I wouldn't call them equal, but you could see a path to where they could beat each other up. AFC was so top-heavy that it was like Bills, Chiefs, I'll throw the Ravens in there, were in a tier of their own, and then there was like every NFC team on the playoff field.
That's where I'm at as well. I think that the AFC is going to win the Super Bowl this year. I don't know which team it's going to be because I'm picking the Chiefs, but I think that's a legit 50-50 proposition on the AFC side. But yeah, whoever wins that ends up winning the whole thing, in my opinion. All right, from the 618, guys, will the crowd for the Savannah Bananas game be larger than most of the regular season Cardinals games this year? I believe yes. Did you guys see this piece over in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch earlier today?
I did.
St. Louis demand for the Savannah Bananas is the highest in the nation.
Now, this is going to sound really Tony, so please don't get upset with me. But that's probably going to be the most exciting baseball Cardinals fans will see all season.
Probably.
Yeah, that's okay. I was going to make a comment like I bet they have a higher winning percentage than the Cardinals this year.
Believe it or not, because you weren't here yesterday, Bill DeWitt III will be in attendance to try and figure out how to make their game day experience better.
Believe it, and he should be.
And then somebody will start dancing on the field before first pitch in the Cardinals game.
There were more than 160,000 entries in the first 72 hours of the lottery for the St. Louis Banana Ball tickets. 160,000.
That's insane.
Man, that's wild.
And you were wondering, Alex, why are you so excited for these tickets? This is why.
No, it makes sense. I don't see the appeal of it, but I mean, I can't deny how many people are obsessed with it right now.
Tickets are $40 to $75. No additional fees are included in that. There's no taxes. There's no service fees, nothing like that. And according to this piece in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the Savannah Bananas had an opportunity from a ticket broker to double those ticket values. And they said no. So that's not what we're all about. So everything that they are about is like what baseball is supposed to be. And so it's a really fun opportunity to go out there and watch something stupid and fun and just get away from all of the nonsense for a few hours. So yeah, I'm super excited about it, and I do think they're going to sell out, obviously, and it'll be a really cool couple of days.
I'm not gonna lie. Ever since Alex brought up the idea of DeWitt being there, I'm picturing him at meetings. Now, hear me out. What if like Victor Scott did a backflip to catch a fly ball?
Yeah.
How about we build a winning team? No. It's about fan
What
experience.
if all nine of
What if we put Contreras on stilts and had him go up there and take an at bat?
What if all 9 of our players just came strutting out of the dugout on stilts to Friday?
There you go.
By Rebecca Black.
It'll be great. I can't wait. All right, from the 314, what's the status of the large sports books such as Circa, FanDuel, etc. in Missouri following the ballot measure? Are they available yet? And if not, do we know when they will be? There's a lot of rumors and stuff about this. Latest we had heard, Alex, was like mid-year. They're hoping to get it done by football season at a minimum.
Yeah, I thought by like spring/summer they were hoping to get it up and running.
I've not seen who specifically is going to be involved, like which of the big brokers. I would imagine Circa, FanDuel, DraftKings will be 3 of them, but I don't know. Every state's a little bit different between which of the brokers are available in that respect.
What'll be interesting is, because I know that the talks were originally to get one in Ballpark Village, how that works out in terms of in the middle of baseball season, if they're able to accomplish that, or if they have to wait till the end of the baseball season.
All right, from the 314, last one here. BK, I am curious, on a scale of 1 to 10, how annoyed are you by the Chiefs refs conversations?
You can't get annoyed when it's true.
Like a 7. I just find them to be exhausting and not particularly interesting. It's not something that necessarily bothers me. I find it kind of annoying. Like I don't find the conversation all that compelling. The Patriots at least had really interesting controversies. Like there was Spygate and there was Deflategate, and one of their players was literally arrested for murder, which is an off-field thing. But like, this stuff, while obviously awful, that last one horrific, at least there were talking points that you could have with it. This is just not, it's not a fun conversation to be had, and there's not a whole lot to talk about there. Like there's Deflategate or Spygate, those had different angles to them. This doesn't. It's just stupid.
Well, what if I just put gate at the end of flag? Would that make it a little more interesting?
Refgate?
Could be Refgate. Yeah. Could be Stripegate.
I guess.
Stripegate,
Flaggate.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's not interesting. Like the biggest thing that we're talking about is a flop that didn't get called. It's just stupid.
Or a headshot.
And I think it takes away from any of the real conversations that can potentially be had. Like the Chiefs are not as good as they were a year ago. And the Bills are really good. And this game, like, I find the overwhelming theme of where we're at in the postseason, guys, to be just like fundamental football, which is not super fun to talk about. And I think that's maybe part of why the refs have become such a conversation this year with the Chiefs. They're not all that interesting. They don't have this high-flying offense the way that they once did. They don't have the suffocating defense the way that they did last year. They're just pretty good at winning football games. And that's a super boring conversation to be had. And so we're looking for other stuff, and this becomes the thing that enters the conversation. They don't turn the ball over, and they turn you over, which is the same thing that the Bills have done.
Yeah, but they're more fun. I like when the Chiefs win on Monday or Sunday, Alex and I are going to talk refs first. I don't care.
Yeah,
what
I will be opening refs. You won't be here, but I'll be doing it in hopes to upset you.
I hate it, and I think this just goes to show you. I mean, we had this conversation.
Plus that, I won't be here, so.
Yeah, he'll be on a boat somewhere.
We had this conversation at the beginning of the year, and I was already on board of like, I can't stand the Chiefs. I hate watching the Chiefs. And we had the conversation of Alex. I think Alex was one that said, I don't know if I necessarily hate them. That maybe I don't like them that much, but I don't necessarily hate them.
They have likable players.
We've officially arrived at we're tired of this because, and I don't even think it's anything about deal with the players outside some of the Mahomes flopping things.
The Mahomes is the part that's frustrating because I love Andy Reid. I think Travis Kelce is hilarious.
You've always hated Mahomes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. But it's gotten worse over these last couple of years.
And I think what's really happened is everybody keeps seeing this going, what you're saying, right? They're not fun. They're not playing this great football, yet somehow they won like 15 games, got the number 1 seed, and they keep getting away with it. They get outgained by the Houston Texans and still win that football game.
Yeah, I think it's two things. One, they're boring, and two, it's overexposure. You see the Chiefs too much. Like, one of the reasons why it feels like the Chiefs get all the calls is because they're always on television.
Well, and
like
they do, but...
You see all of their games, and you see these big games, and they almost always win. And so when you see them and they come out on the winning side of things and they're getting these calls in front of you, it's like, dude, this is so annoying. They always end up getting these favorable calls and they end up winning. And it's not necessarily causation, but it can feel that way if you're not a Chiefs fan. And so I do get it from a viewing perspective. If you're not a Chiefs fan, I totally understand why it feels that way. But really a lot of it, like, it felt this way with LeBron. Why? Because we always saw him in the playoffs getting to the NBA Finals. It felt this way with Brady. Why? Because he was always winning in the playoffs. And yes, they did get some favorable calls, and they did protect the quarterback, as they do with every quarterback. But anyways, I find it all to be pretty exhausting and not all that interesting to talk about. I'm glad we were at least able to talk about the game before we got to this. All right, coming up next. The Blues are showing real signs of frustration right now. Joey Vitale had an interesting thought on this yesterday. I want to get Alex's analysis on it coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Ferrario are broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center. We have Jordan Deacon back in the studio for us today. And Alex, last night, it wasn't just that the Blues lost. It wasn't just how they did it. It was also the vibes. The vibes are just down.
You weren't picking up good vibration. Remember when we did that?
Yep, that was a much more fun version of this St. Louis Blues team.
It was a really fun year, guys.
Yeah, 2022 was great. I really enjoyed that playoff run. We'd go down to Enterprise Center together, do the pre- and post-game
We did shows there, too.
It was great.
Yeah,
it was awesome. I would love to do that again, but it feels right now like that's probably unlikely. That being said, Alex, it's the vibes of specifically that top line, and Booch and Thomas. And I want to focus on Thomas because he has to be one of your top leaders on this squad. He's wearing the A for a reason, right? There was at least consideration at one point to making him the captain of this team. So Joey Vitale on the broadcast last night broke this down in a way that I simply cannot because I've never played the game at the professional level. He can. So if you don't trust us on this, trust Joey. Here's what he had to say on the broadcast about the Blues' body language last night.
Even just being around Sidney Crosby, I was around him in his first couple years, and he kind of had the reputation of being a whiny little baby. And he really did. And he was yelling at refs and complaining about calls and why didn't that happen right? Or come on, pass me the puck. And, over time, it was the Billy Guerins, right? It was the Billy Guerins, the Brooks Orpiks of the world, even the Mary Lemieux who was living with. Those veteran players kind of took him under his wing saying, hey, your body language is important. You're a leader. Everyone's looking to you. If you start freaking out, everyone's going to start freaking out. You stay calm under pressure. You stay calm when you're down by 2. Everyone else is going to stay calm. So I think it's a learning curve for a lot of these young players, and you got to give them a little bit of time. You got to give them a little bit of grace because they are still kind of, I think, in this new phase of these leadership roles, but nonetheless, it needs to get done.
So this is something that I've you notice in games, specifically this season, but it's kind of like, okay, well, he's playing well. I mean, Robert Thomas was one of the best players in the NHL in December. So even the ones that he's missing the net on and he's doing the banner reader, it's like, okay, that you get frustrated. It happens. But when you're going through a bad streak of play, that is even more glaring in my opinion. And because you are a leader, you are wearing that letter. And when Kerbs brought it up, it just kind of stuck out to me. And it's like, okay, so then you start focusing in on it more. And I thought last night was a perfect example of it. There were multiple times where the pass didn't go onto the tape and you see him smack a stick down. A power play doesn't go well. He goes back to the bench and he takes a swing at the bench. Pavel Buchnevich missed a goal as he was falling down and he throws his stick across the ice. And look, these guys are human. We forget it, like they're not robots, and this is going to happen. But for a team that is going through the ups and downs of a season and trying to get that mental confidence back, I just really wondered, is that the best look for your team when the guy that is the guy that is your best player, the one that's out there 19 minutes a night, and he's getting frustrated because things aren't going his way right now. I mean, he's the second worst even strength goal differential on the team in the month of January. So it makes sense he's getting frustrated. But when you see the guy throwing his stick in every single play, it's just more and more like, oh man, he's out of it. As a team, I have to imagine for how fragile you could be, when that guy's going through it, everyone's got to be like, oh, geez, this isn't going to be a good night for us. And then the mistakes start to creep in. And then you start walking on eggshells because it's like, well, he's not in this, so how are we going to get in this? And it's what Mike McKenna told us in the 11 o'clock hour. Like, yeah, it's not good because it can seep into the locker room. And for all we know, somebody's grabbed a hold of him and said something. We aren't in there on a daily basis around the players like they are. But it's just something that has been going on from really January 1st up until now. And to me, I don't think it's a coincidence that the team has been playing 500 or below and not coming up in these big games that are meaningful for the Blues when Robert Thomas, is going through his struggles.
We got this text from the 636, and 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. I'm fine with it. Would rather see that than no emotion at all. I think there's some truth to that. I also think that at times it can go a little bit too far. And then there was this answer from Robert Thomas yesterday on TMA. I want to play the full thing because, Alex, I don't want anything to get lost in translation. So we're going to play the questions This came from TMA, I believe it was yesterday, when Robert Thomas joined them on the show. And I want to get your guys' reaction on the other side.
I know you talked after the game Saturday in Utah, the disappointment of the game, but also Coach Monty moving you around on lines. How does that play out during a game? Does he bark at you? Does he talk to you after the game? Hey, I made this decision because of this. Tell me how that plays out.
No, you kind of just go with what's happening. Obviously disappointment from my line and myself, and yeah, we try and rebound and come out stronger.
And is it the case where not much needs to be said?
Yeah, I don't think much needed to be said.
Okay. Just those answers alone, I wouldn't want to make too much of it. It is what it is. He's clearly frustrated by all of it, and I get that. And if those were the answers that he had said right after the game, Alex, I would be totally understanding of that. It's coming off of a game where you've been benched, and the last thing you want to do is talk about it, right? So I would get that. This is a couple of days later. You've had a practice at this point. You've been out there, and I would imagine talks to Jim Montgomery because one of his biggest things is open communication with the players.
Right.
And then he goes and says that on the morning show. And then last night happens where that performance is put out on the ice. And so when you combine all of it, it's just not a great look, man. It's just not a great look. And again, I'm not trying to be overreactionary here. I'm not. And Robert Thomas could go out there on Saturday and have the best game of his NHL career and completely bounces back. And suddenly we're talking about this 2 weeks from now. And we're like, man, look, Robert Thomas, that was the wake-up call that he needed. That's very much in play. It just looks, feels, and sounds off right now. And I can't explain why that's happening because for all the talk about chemistry, and I remember when Randy was still doing the morning show, they had the interview with Robert Thomas, and he was asked, hey, who's the guy that you have the best chemistry with? And the first answer that he said, Pavel Buchnevich.
Yep, not even thinking.
So for any of the talk about him being put into bad situations, like, it's all right there for him, man. He's had success with Buch and Neighbors on the ice with him. That's the combination. He should be in a really good spot right now with the head coach. There's no more excuses there. There's no more talk about the defense because despite Fowler having a really bad moment early on in this game, the defense is playing pretty well, man.
Yeah.
It's you. And so eventually you have to look in the mirror, and instead of saying, like, yeah, it's a rough talk, there's really nothing more that needs... No, clearly something needs to be said. Clearly there needs to be some kind of discussions because whatever is happening right now, it's not leading to an improvement on the ice. And then those bad moments lead to this head dip or a look up into the rafter or a roll of the eyes. And if you're going to be one of the A's on the ice, one of the guys that has that letter on your chest, and you're going to be considered one of the best players, not just on the Blues, but on the in all of the NHL, and you're going to be a guy that wants to go play for Canada in the Four Nations face-off, these are the things that are required. So he's got to pick his game up, and it has to be both the on-ice product and also, yes, the leadership stuff. It's got to go to the next level sooner rather than later.
So a couple of things on our Air Comfort Service text line, 314-399-9646. First one from the 636. I'm fine with this, guys. Would rather see emotion than not see any emotion at all. I get it. What, did you read that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, we'll move on. We're not going to read that one. But
it's all right. I talked for a really long time, so I get you.
I don't even think you said that one, but that's fine. I just like there's different types of emotion. Like I want my guys to be emotional on the ice, but I don't want that emotion because that emotion just puts a complete damper on the game. Like let's say one goal goes in, and then the next shift that guy takes the ice and a shot goes wide. And he looks up at the banners where he smacks his stick, or a power play doesn't go well. It's the first power play of the game, and you come back to the bench because you're pissed off at the guys because the play didn't work out, and you swat the stick. Well, that's everybody thinking. Like the perfect example I can say, and BK, I'm sure you've been through this, you go on a date when you're younger, and like your mood is good, but the girl you're going with or the guy you're going with, their mood's not good, and it just puts a damper on the whole evening. That's what it feels like. But the other one for me, go ahead.
On that point, my wife will get mad at me for saying this, but it's fine. We're going on vacation. She'll be in a good mood in 2 days. Happy birthday, baby.
Yeah, happy birthday, Kara. Shout out.
There are times where I make Kara upset about something, right? And Kara's reaction to that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes is, she then goes into goes into her shell, not just for the next hour or so. Like it could be like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're going on a date that night or whatever, right? And so there are times where, Alex, this may happen to others as well out there that can experience this, where it's okay for the rest of the night because of that. I'm now going to be upset, which then ends up like making the entire evening not a particularly enjoyable experience for everybody involved. And she gets mad at herself for this. That's kind of what this is, where it's like, okay, because of that moment, I'm now going to make the next 2 hours of this hockey game miserable instead of moving on from it and trying to improve after that moment. All right, sorry, Alex.
No, you're good. The other one that somebody brought up, it says you guys just continue to ride the roller coaster with this team. The ups are they're a playoff team. The downs are they're a terrible team with terrible leadership. We're not riding the roller coaster, but what we're witnessing, and Tebow mentioned this in the open, is we're witnessing the same problem always coming up with the Blues. And us saying,
I am going through the roller coaster.
Well, and that's what happens. But like saying things that we're riding a roller coaster with this, Blues fans did the exact same thing with Jordan Kyrou for the last 2 years. And when he wasn't playing hard, or in people's opinion, going hard on pucks, what was the quote? Kyrou doesn't care. He's just floating through the game. But then when a guy is showing frustration, which, like, again, this is pro sports. Everybody's going to get frustrated at times. But when he's showing those emotions and the play isn't matching with it, it's like, oh, those are the emotions with this. It is a little bit of what Joe said, to where, look, you got guys who are still learning the ropes of being in the NHL. But, man, when you get the A on your chest, I don't know if I can do that same give you grace period, because now you are looked at. And Braden Shen had said this, and I forgot who talked with us last season about him being a captain and saying he's a great captain, but you can't do it yourself.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, Ryan O'Reilly was the one that said that. He had said it to Joe about Braden Shen's leadership and said he was always a captain behind the scenes, but the thing about being a captain is it can't just be you. And when you've got the leadership group that the coaches are deeming of these are the guys that are in charge, there's many nights where bad games take place that the coach doesn't even walk into that locker room. And that's why, to me, it's at least something worth looking at, to where it's like on a consistent basis, if the ups and downs of that frustration with the player, that's the guy that everybody in that locker room's looking at when things aren't going well.
So the last thing on this, and coming up on the other side, we'll get into some NFL quick hitters, including some coaching news that's taken place within the last few hours. It's not getting mad necessarily at individual moments, because sure, you're going to have frustration, right? We get frustrated in our own life. So like everybody's going to have moments where it's like, hey man, that sucked. Show some emotion, and I don't have any issues with that. In fact, I think it's a good thing sometimes, especially for players at this level, this specific sport especially, to show some of those emotions. I think that can actually be a real positive thing. It's when it becomes an all-the-time thing. Like, you remember this with David Perron. Not all the time, but there were times where he would, like, you'd see a goal go in the back of the net, and then he would take his stick and slam it over the goal. Like, that is something that we have seen, and Perron got lauded for some of those moments because, like, man, at least that dude shows me he cares. But it wasn't all the time. And that's what is leading me to be a little concerned about what we've seen over the last few weeks, is it's become pretty consistent, especially with those top-line guys. As they're going through their frustrations and their struggles, these are becoming more and more and more apparent, and the more and more and more regular. And now it's multiple times a game where you see stuff like this. And that's not good for anybody involved, including the players that are going through it right now, who need to find their way through the other side. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, Jack Flaherty said something interesting. He might have a point on this. I know nobody wants to hear it, but we'll get into that in 15 minutes. NFL Quick Hitters next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK for my friends over at Victory Men's Health, and it is time for you to unlock your inner champion. The place to do so is with Victory Men's Health. You can check them out today. 4 great locations across the St. Louis metro, but if you are a first-time user of their services, go ahead and check them out online at victorymenshealth.com. victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. They can help you out with your weight loss goals for the upcoming year. If you don't feel like you have the same energy that you once did, you're not getting the same amount of production out of your workouts as you used to, it could be due to low testosterone, and they can check your levels for that over at Victory Men's Health. They can also help out guys with those erectile dysfunction issues, or if you just want some vitamin infusions or you want to check out a little bit more on their red light therapy programs, all of that is available to you. Everybody has a little bit different of an answer when you ask the question of how do you unlock your inner champion, and they can do that for all of you over at victorymenshealth.com. To book your first appointment, go to their website, put in your name, email, phone number. Tell them a little bit about what it means for you to unlock your inner champion. You can tell them that BK with 101 ESPN sent you to Victory Men's Health. It's Victory Men's Health at victorymenshealth.com.
Broadcasting live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios. This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Fedurko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Let's dive into some NFL quick hitters. Alex, we do have some NFL news on the coaching front from today. It sounds like Pete Carroll is going to be the next head coach for your Las Vegas Raiders. I actually like the hire. For all of the reasons that I said I would have liked to hire if he ended up going to like Chicago, it's a floor raiser. The Raiders very clearly know, all right, this is not our time. We're not in a window right now where in the next 3 years we're going to be a Super Bowl contender.
What?
But Pete Carroll knows a lot of people that are really good on the front office side. He can put together a really good coaching staff. We've seen that from his history in Seattle as well. He's super energetic. He is, I mean, at a minimum, a top half of the league type of a coach. You're going to be a well-coached team under Pete Carroll. He's going to move you in the right direction. And then 3 to 5 years from now, when maybe you've got things in place, Pete steps aside, you put the coach in place that you want to really lead you to the next level of contention. That's when you go get your Ben Johnson. That's when you go get whoever the hot shot coordinator is at that point in time. Or if like Sean McVay has stepped away or Kyle Shanahan has run its course in San Francisco, you go make your run at whoever that coach is at that point in time. I think this is a really smart hire for the Raiders. What'd you make of it, Alex?
Yeah, I liked it. I think when you're the Las Vegas Raiders, you realize that the savior quarterback isn't coming through the doors anytime soon. And so what do you need to do? You need to establish winning with everyone else on your team. You need to build a winning culture and mindset so that when you have the opportunity to draft that next franchise icon for your team, the culture is already put in place. And Pete Carroll is a guy that has a winning pedigree. So everybody in that locker room realizes what you just brought in. You mentioned putting together a really good coaching staff. Who knows what this team looks like once this offseason is finally complete? But it's at least going to be established of, hey, Pete Carroll can get us to being back to a average team, and then hopefully we can go find that missing link that can make us a great team.
T-Bone, out of curiosity, do you think this means that Russell Wilson's going to be the next quarterback of the Raiders? Reunion there?
I kind of wonder if it is, yeah, because all the reports that I've seen have said, hey, they kind of mended fences. Hey, you know what? It kind of makes sense for the Raiders, right? You bring in Russ, you bring in some stability. I think he's better than what they tried last offseason, which was, what if we did Gardner Minshew? No. Now, I do like this hire of Pete Carroll. Like, if Sean McVay did, say he retired today and Pete was still available, he would have been the first guy I would have wanted the Rams to call, just because he is a winner. Here's where I hope this makes sense, because this is, the one question I have about this move. I agree. It's probably smart to bring in some stability. It's what we talked about with the Bears, of, hey, if you miss out on the hot shot candidate, bring in a guy that's going to at least get Caleb Williams to the next level, and you're going to get probably 10 wins, and then you'll always shoot for that guy that can get you to that ceiling, which is, hey, let's go be the Lions, win 13, 14 games, be the number one seed. What stability is brought to the Raiders, which is a 3-win roster? Right? That's the only question I have. I get it. It's trying to bring stability of, hey, we just want this guy here for the next 3 years. But they're not going to be winning a lot. And what happens when you're not winning? We can talk about all we want about having a really big-name coach. You're not going to be able to stabilize things because players are just going to get sick of losing constantly. So that's the only question I have of how much stability will this really bring when they are such a far-away roster in the midst of a rebuild?
I don't know, man. I think there's value in having somebody that just, when you're going through that retool process, is going to get the most out of your young players and is going to coach them up in a way where, you're not going to screw these guys up early on in their NFL careers. Whereas if you brought in another coach that, Bobby Slowick last year, was a hot shot coordinator. He was in consideration for a few different head coaching opportunities, and he decided, I'm not ready for those yet. I'm going to come back to Houston to be the offensive coordinator for the Texans. News within the last hour, Bobby Slowick has been fired. Why? The offensive line is a disaster. The young players didn't get better, and he was not a good offensive coordinator. It was actually the quarterback, C.J. Stroud, that propped that team up. And the offensive coordinator was actually part of the problem that was preventing them from reaching their ultimate ceiling. If a team like the Raiders had hired Bobby Slowick last offseason, let's say they were a year early on this, they might have gone into a 3-year cycle where they actually end up ruining some of their young players because they're not getting the coaching that's required. And they did it by trying to aim for that ceiling with Bobby Slowick, by thinking that they got the next hotshot coordinator. So that is why, in my opinion, they went this route. It's because you know that he's going to be able to get the most out of your young players. He's going to coach them up.
And the Pittsburgh Steelers just won 10 games with Russell Wilson. So, I don't know if they're going to bring in Russell Wilson, but let's say they do. You at least feel like you can get to being back to a close to 500 team compared to where the Raiders were this past year.
Also, while being bad this year, they're also one of the worst coach teams in the NFL, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
And they're in a really difficult division. They could win 6 or 7 games next year, and that's not good. Don't get me wrong, but you could get back to some form of respectability. The Colts were not a good football team this year. They won 8 games. The Cincinnati Bengals, for the most part this year, not particularly good at the game of football. They ended up winning 9 games.
The Dolphins weren't a good team this year. They got 8.
Maybe the best example of this, the Dallas Cowboys stunk for most of the season. They won 7 games, and what now you look back on, you're like, man, that's a pretty damn good division with Washington and Philly. So it can be done, especially if you're well coached. And I think Pete Carroll is a really, really good football coach. All right, next thing up, I do want to get you guys' reaction to this. We mentioned it kind of offhand there. The Houston Texans are making the big move that we wondered if they would make. They're firing their offensive coordinator in Bobby Slowick. You surprised by this, Alex?
No. That offense was bad. That offense was supposed to be one of the best they were supposed to be somewhat like the Detroit Lions this year. And for how last season went with C.J. Stroud and their dynamic weapons, and then you add in Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon, that was a massive disappointment. So my bigger question is, what took you so long? because now a lot of these coordinators are gone.
I would go get Chip Kelly.
That's who I was thinking first name that I would probably
Ohio State connection, C.J. Stroud. I don't think he didn't coach C.J. Stroud. He wasn't there yet when C.J. Stroud was there, but his offense, I think, can work at the NFL level. He just had a ton of success this year. I would go make the move if I'm Chip, and that would be my first call if I'm the Houston Texans. And that would explain, if that is their plan, it would explain why they waited so long, because he didn't have anything else going on. He was coaching for the college football playoff championship.
Yeah, Chip Kelly was the first name that I thought of, but outside of that, it's going to be hard to find a sexy candidate out there to really bring in. It's probably going to have to be one of those where you bring him in, we don't know who it is, and then you hope that within a year we're talking about him as a hot candidate, because they had to make the move because of Stroud's struggles. I mean, he was worse than Bryce Young in the second half of the season. And I'm not saying that as a shot at Bryce Young, because he really improved, but it does show you how far Stroud fell. We were talking about him being a potential top 10, if not already a top 10 quarterback going into the season, and he left the year going, okay, maybe that's still there, but he ended up falling into that 15 to 20 range, which was very disappointing.
All right, last thing here. I don't know how much you guys followed this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator saga with Liam Cohen over the past 24 hours or so. Cohen decided that he is indeed going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars job. Now, a couple of days ago, the Jaguars had announced, this was right after our show on Wednesday, I guess it would have been. They announced that they were firing Trent Baalke, their general manager. And it became one of those questions of now why would they do that? And the answer was obviously because there's a coach that they really want that told them, you've got to fire him. And I thought it was too late. Too little, too late. Cohen had already decided he's going to stick with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had a contract in place, but apparently it wasn't yet signed. So the Bucs are trying to get in touch with Liam Cohen to say, hey, come sign the contracts that we have knocked out with your agent. And Cohen just basically said, hey, I'm not responding to that. I'm leaving you on red. In the meantime, he is in Jacksonville meeting with the Jaguars to talk about their head coaching opportunity once again. And he has since taken it. Liam Cohen is now the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, so congratulations to him. Well done, sir. You played this about as perfectly as you could. What do you make of Liam Cohen, the next Jaguars head coach, Alex?
It's going to be a lot of booing every next time they play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, you got to go do what's best for your career, right? This opportunity wasn't there because he didn't want to take it with the GM in place, and then they fired the GM because they realized they wanted the guy. If I'm Liam, I'm looking at this saying okay, well, the Jacksonville job's not there for me. Is Tampa still here? So you go back to it, and yeah, job's still here for you. And then Jacksonville calls you again and says, hey, we've made changes. We'd like you back. Probably shouldn't have left him on red. Yeah. Maybe let him know, hey, I'm going back. They made some changes. I'll keep you posted. But again, I'm sure this happened pretty quickly in terms of turnaround. They've just called, let's go fly out and talk to Shad Khan again.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with the way I don't have an issue with him going to take the job. Yeah. I do have an issue with the way he's just leaving the Tampa Bay Bucs on red.
At least text back and say, hold on.
Yeah, and there's the report out there of he claimed that he was at a doctor's appointment with a sick kid. Dude, the Bucs are going to understand if you tell them, hey, Jacksonville just fired their GM for me. I'm going to go talk to them one more time. And if nothing happens, I'll be back and I'll sign this contract.
Bingo.
It's not that hard.
It's not like the Bucs are going to be no, actually contract's off the table.
Yeah.
It's no.
We don't want you back.
Super in demand. The reason why you got a $4.5 million offer to be the OC of the Bucs was because of the Jaguars' interest. You finally have leverage, which means that you can get an upgrade in your pay from the Bucs. It was a really weird saga, and I don't think he played this particularly well. But he got the job that he wanted ultimately, and he got it with the power structure that he wanted in place. So I guess good for him.
Well, the other thing that I don't fully understand is, how much lack of communication was there between him and the Jaguars for that, right? Because it was well-spoken. Shad Khan said at a press conference with Baalke on that same conference, I'll fire that guy. If we get the right coach, that guy's gone.
Yep.
But yet somehow he does this first interview. He clearly must not have had a conversation about, hey, I can't work with Baalke.
Or he did, and at the time they said
told him no.
I think they believed for whatever reason that they were getting a different candidate. I don't know who that guy would have been that was okay with the structure in place.
I wonder if it was solid.
Oh, well, I think they got more no's after Liam said no, and then I think when you get 5 different no's, it's we got to fire this guy, and then they go back to their number one priority and tell him hey, we've made changes.
I can't help but wonder if Saleh was the guy that led to that, because remember there was the report of Cohen's going to take the Bucs OC job, he's going to sign a contract extension. Then it was Saleh's getting a second interview, and I think the moment Helmet and Salah said, hey, I'm not working with Balky, they went, all right, well, he is option 2. And then to your point, they were like, screw it, Balky, you're fired. Let's go talk back to Cohen again.
If we have to fire Balky either way, and we can either get our number 1 or number 2 option, we'll just take the number 1 option and fire Balky the way that we have.
We know the number 2 will be here if Balky's gone. Let's go back to number 1, though, and see if we can get the same.
All right, let's go. Coming up next to talk about Jack Flaherty, a guy that everybody was ready to see go. Unfortunately, he did make what I thought was an interesting point on foul territory the other day. We'll let you hear that, reacts to it coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Last night, the Blues lost to the Vegas Golden Knights by a score of 4-2. They're back in action tomorrow night at Enterprise Center, welcoming in the Dallas Stars. Pre-game coverage starts at 5, and then puck drop is at 6, right here on 101 ESPN. Before that Blues game tomorrow, we'll have college basketball action for you starting at noon. And then on Sunday, you can hear both the NFC and AFC championships games right here on 101 ESPN beginning at 1 o'clock. I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. E&B Granite, Bernie Fedurko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
So Jack Flaherty was on with foul territory yesterday, which that sentence alone might be enough for people to click off their radio, but please don't. He said something I found to be really interesting, and you might actually find yourself agreeing with some of what he had to say on foul territory. He was asked about the Dodgers, and everybody's mad at them right now because it feels like they're the overwhelming favorite to win the World Series, and that's just not a feeling. It's also backed based on what Vegas has them installed at right now as a favorite to win the World Series. They're plus 250 right now, Alex, to win it all next season. To put that in context, last week me and T-Bone won a good amount of money on the Washington Commanders. To win one game, they were plus 450. You bet $100, you win $450. If you bet $100 right now on the Dodgers, not just to win a game or a series or anything, to win the World Series at the end of the season, you'd win $250. So here's what Jack Flaherty had to say about the Dodgers and their model.
They just defer money. They just do this and that. I was like, well, yeah, I mean, people want to go play in LA. They want to win. People want to play in Philly. That's an unbelievable place to go play and win. It's not that the only place. There's places to go that have won and are consistently in the playoffs and are consistently right there with the chance to win. There's everybody else that kind of just sitting in limbo, but the team that just won the World Series has made the most additions. And you're like, how do they keep getting guys? Like, well, they're just getting better and trying to go back to back. They've got Shohei for the next 9 years. They've got Yamamoto for the next 11 years. They're going to have Sasaki. They're trying to win as many as they can in that time frame. You'd like to see other teams make the same additions because you would think, okay, we got to catch this team. We need to go add. The top team, they just added more pieces.
A lot of what he had to say there, theoretically speaking, I agree with. I've been critical of the Cardinals for not taking advantage of their window the way that I thought they should have. So, yeah, it stands to reason a lot of what he's saying there. You'd be saying that about other teams for not capitalizing on their winning window. Here's the thing. The Dodgers right now are paying, according to the CBT threshold, $374 million for the upcoming season. The Cardinals are the middle of the pack in terms of payroll right now. They're at 163 for the CBT. Less than half of what the Dodgers are at. The Padres, who everybody enjoys watching, right? They're doing the right way. They're more than $100 million behind the Padres in this regard. Like, you could add up the San Diego Padres payroll and let's go with the Kansas City Royals payroll, and you get roughly equivalent to what the Dodgers are at right now. So, yeah, teams could push. They could do a little bit more. I do agree with him in that regard. Like, I think there are a lot of teams that you look at the free agents right now, it's like, dude, why aren't you more interested in this guy? Why aren't more teams interested in, specifically, Jack Flaherty? He can help you win baseball games, and team just, that's not the number one priority right now. So, in that way, I agree with Jack Flaherty. But the Dodgers are a different animal right now than what Major League Baseball has dealt with for years. First of all, Roki Sasaki is just a totally different conversation than any of this other stuff. Also, the way they're structuring these deals, it feels like a circumventing of some sort of a cap or just like a get around of what the rules are there to avoid. And that, I think, is what makes fans so frustrated. It's not just like if they were just paying Shohei Ohtani $60 million a year, that's one thing, and they're at like a $400 million payroll. That's not what this is. This is a we got a few workarounds here. Every contract that we get, we'll see the first number that's released of 3 years, $75 million. And then people make the jokes about how $50 million deferred for the next 10 years. And then that's what happens. That's what's driving people nuts right now. So I do think this is a little different to me, Alex.
Yeah, I do too. And, I mean, he even said it at the beginning of his answer there. It's like, well, yeah, the Dodgers are deferring payments. Well, yeah, not many teams in Major League Baseball have the ability to do that to where they can go out there and get – everybody's got the chance to bring in these guys. And, yeah, L.A. probably has the advantage. But you know what gives them even more of the advantage? When they could say, yeah, we could defer payments and give you a ton of money to where we're able to bring in all of these stars. I do think – big picture with Jack Flaherty, he's absolutely correct. Like, the one thing that the Dodgers have done is they have developed a really good system, and then with that really good system, they've been churning out great players, and then they'll trade those players to go get guys. Like, they, for the longest time, had a top farm system in Major League Baseball. They traded assets to go get Mookie Betts. You know, they were able to go out there and make trades to bring in guys. Now we're seeing all the deferred payments and them just continue to rile up the money. But what got them here was developing all of those players and then moving them out to bring in assets that make them even better.
Man, when you look at some of the salaries on their books for the upcoming season, like we talked about this the other day, Will Smith is their best homegrown player right now. Because like the Dodgers, I used to say the same thing as you, Alex. Hey man, look at how much they're relying on these internally developed players. How could I be mad at them when they're just doing this stuff better than everybody else? Now it feels different. Yeah. Now you look at it, okay, Will Smith is their best homegrown player. Who is second on that list? It's really hard to come up with the correct answer to that. Yep. And you could say Clayton Kershaw. I don't even know if Clayton Kershaw is going to be a part of their rotation next year. Like he might be a bullpen arm for them, given what they have available to them out of the rotation right now.
He may not be back till June when everybody's hurt.
Yeah. Based on their CBT numbers, here are some of the guys that are on the books for this upcoming year. Tyler Glasnow at 32, Shohei Ohtani at 28, Blake Snell 27, Mookie Betts 26, Freddie Freeman 22, Yamamoto 18, Conforto at 17, Tanner Scott 15, Muncy 15, Teoscar Hernandez 14, Chris Taylor 13. The whole bleeping roster is $13 to $35 million for them.
And this is where they really take advantage of it, because you mentioned there, like that was you were reading off their CBT number. You know, I think where a lot of the confusion comes is, like you mentioned, deferrals, right? So everybody says, well, everybody can do that, right? Well, I can't remember what Blake Snell's number ended up being, but he ended up getting deferrals in his contract as well. So say it was $20 million in deferrals. Everybody seems to think, oh, well, that's like 5 years after that contract expires. No, here's where the Dodgers take advantage, right? When they say deferrals, they have to pay that money down now somewhere, right? They have to put it in an account somewhere. It's how Mo got away with the classic, hey, payroll's going up. And we're like, well, man, they should have like $20 million. No, we had to put the deferrals in the bank right now. We're at our payroll. Oh, that's where the problem is, right? Because like you're looking at Blake Snell. Blake Snell, his AAV for this year and his luxury tax number is $31.7 million. Cash-wise, he's getting $65 million this year. And some of that is going into the deferred money section of that. But some of that's also a signing bonus when you got $52 million. That's where the Dodgers take advantage, right? It's not just the AAV. Because if this was a cap, then there would be an argument, I think, from what Jack is saying. And some of what Jack says I kind of agree with. Like, any team could afford to take Teoscar Hernandez contract. It's more of the Blake Snell, the Yamamoto kind of deals that are really hitting teams in these smaller to mid-markets. They're dealing with the RSN situation. These teams have lost some of their RSN revenue to where they can't be putting $65 million. Most teams have, like, maybe best-case scenario, $30 million to play with in an offseason. The Dodgers just spent twice of that on one player, and some of that's not even going to be on their books for this season.
And then went out and kept adding. And they were like, in more. And that's what makes it very difficult for these other teams to be able to catch up. The gap between the haves and the have-nots has simply never been bigger than what it is currently right now in the game. And I see that getting worse before it gets better. So that's something that's, I believe, turning a lot of people off about where Major League Baseball is as of today. In 10 minutes, is this good enough? Or, excuse me, is it good enough for the Cardinals to just win? Or do they have to win a specific style with this next core group of position players? We'll talk about that coming up in about 10 minutes. The Junk Drawer is next year on 101 ESPN.
live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios. This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Alex and T-Bone on BK, so let's dive into the junk drawer real quickly. Alex, I thought yesterday at one point in time we were going to have to cancel our trip for the cruise that we're going on next week. Legitimately, there were plans in action of what takes place if we have to either postpone or completely cancel our trip. And the reason why is because our little man Luca, in the middle of the night on Wednesday night leading into yesterday, this is the reason why I ended up missing yesterday's show, threw up a couple of times. Now, throwing up is an absolutely miserable experience. I hate it more than anything in the world. Are we still on the air? Do you guys know? Jordan, just real quickly, are we still on the air right now? Yep, you're good. Thank you so much. 1 o'clock?
It is 1 o'clock. We know what. It's 1 o'clock somewhere.
So, in the middle of the night, he wakes up, and I go in to rock him, and he's doing the thing, Alex, you know this, and certainly any of our listeners would be familiar with this. There's a certain stretch that a kid does when he's got some gas that needs to be released. I thought that's what Luca was doing. That was not the end result of this specific stretch, though. This time around, it came out the front, or the top instead of the bottom.
Like a volcano.
Yeah, it erupted real quickly. So throws up all over me. So at this point, my wife gets up as well, and we end up going to the bathroom. We do the whole thing, right? Fist does the whole thing, and he's eating like he's a full-grown man at this point, right? And he's great the rest of the day. Acts as if nothing has happened. And then roughly, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock yesterday, he has literally a bite. And I mean like a crumb of my sandwich that I had prepared for myself. And he spits it out, and about 20 seconds later, vroom, round 4, ready to go. So I text you guys. I'm like, hey, guys, I don't think I'm going to be able to come in for the show tomorrow. There's just no way that this is going to work out. And he ends up having a couple more of those experiences. And then, boom, once again, locked in, no problems whatsoever, had no issues overnight. So we've got our fingers crossed right now. Kara's parents are going to be watching Luca next week. I'm hopeful that we don't come down with anything in the next 24 hours, and we're allowed
that's a for sure
to
thing.
Avoid this, whatever this bug is. Dude, we had real thoughts last night of, do we just go in? We've got the traveler's insurance. I know somebody said, yeah, it's BK, it's called traveler's insurance. You got to have it, a trip, never have a trip without it. We got it. Woof. Not a good 24 hours for 36 hours at this point for your boy, buddy.
Nope. Yep, we've been there before to where you debate canceling. The thing with my wife is, like, when somebody gets sick, it's ultimate panic mode. Like, she just her body, like, shuts down. She starts panicking.
Dude,
she's got to clean everything. And, like, with me, since we've been married pre-kids, it's like, okay, I'm vomiting in the bathroom, and she's got the Lysol and there's standing outside the bathroom like, I got to clean. It's like, can I finish puking first? But then once we've had kids, it's like she just has to, like, check out. She's like, I need you to handle it. Kids are super freaking resilient. I mean, both of my girls are dealing with what Luca was dealing with today. I left, and both were kind of feeling it. My oldest had thrown up a couple of times, and it's like, oh, okay, so we're in for a rodeo. But it's amazing because I got a text from my wife 2 hours later, and I asked how she was doing. Smile from cheek to cheek with a popsicle, and she was like, I'm good.
Dude, 5 minutes after. They need a few minutes because they get annoyed. Luca just gets frustrated. It's like,
wouldn't you?
This is so stupid.
I have to stop what I'm doing to puke. I ate this food for a reason.
And he gets so mad about it, and then he's fine. Like 5 minutes later, you would never know that Luca was sick. If you eliminated the 5-minute spans of, like, his life was a movie right now, and you just had deleted the scenes of the 5 minutes where he's puking and then mad about it, you would have no belief, no recollection that he was sick. Nothing else about him right now appears to be a kid that's sick.
The worst part about it, too, is the laundry.
Oh, yeah.
Especially overnight because
12 loads in the last 2 days.
we only have like 5 pairs of sheets for the bed. And there was one time when Adelaide was 2 where she was reacting to some medicine that she had. And I think we went through all 5 of her sheets in the middle of the night that we had to throw into the laundry. And we're like, well, I guess you're sleeping on a beach towel because we have nothing else.
Somebody from the 573 says, headline coming soon. St. Louis man in Travis Kelce jersey infects entire cruise line. I'm sure we'll have some kind of a story whenever I get back from our cruise. All right, in 15 minutes, we're going to be talking to Chris Kerber. He's the voice of the Blues. He joins us weekly here on BK and Ferrario. But next, is it good enough for the Cardinals to just win, get back to those winning ways? Or do they have to do so a specific way for you to really buy into this next core group of players? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
BK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So this is a question that T-Bone asked us earlier today, Alex. So I want to get his explanation for it. But is it good enough for the Cardinals to win? Or do they have to win in a specific style whenever they get to this next core group of players? T-Bone, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I've heard multiple people now talking about, like, you know, Ollie made a comment at winter warm-up, and he said, you know, we want to play fast. We want to play aggressive. And some people hear that and go, they can't play that way. They don't have the roster to steal bases.
Who would react that way?
I won't say names. You know, it might be from 2 to 6, but I don't know.
Who specifically on that show that would
call them out? Say it with your chest.
Well, I heard Stoltz saying he was just
There it
doing a
is.
press conference.
There it is.
So he was doing press conference, you know, MO, just saying the good stuff. And, you know, I won't lie. I kind of agree with Stoltz to that point.
No, that's fine.
Because I think sports press conferences are stupid. But anyways, but the reason I brought up this question was, you know, every time it feels like the Cardinals are winning, it feels like, or what we've talked about recently is, hey, Cardinals have like a balanced lineup, right? I know we had this conversation last year going into the season of, man, they've got the guys that get on base. They got the guys that could be boppers in the middle, like Gorman and Arenado and Goldschmidt. And then they've got the guys that are more of like the defense first style that maybe aren't great offensively. And they've got kind of the slap hitter and Mason Wynn. Like, they've got all these different profiles. And yet I felt like nobody ever liked them. Even before the season started. Like, when the season started, I got it. But still felt like nobody really liked that there wasn't a full identity. And everybody would point to something. Oh, well, they have too much, don't hit for enough power. Oh, they don't steal bases. Oh, they don't have enough speed. Oh, they're not good defensively. So I just wonder, now that we're in this reset, right? This is supposed to be the year you find out about the young. You're almost kind of starting a new version of whatever the Cardinal way is. My question is, what to become? What do people want this next era of Cardinals baseball to be? Because I don't know if I never felt that way in the years that I've been covering it, that people were happy with the way that the Cardinals were playing baseball.
It's a really interesting question because, like, I feel like Cardinals different things with their team. They want the power, but yet they want the whitey ball, and then they want the just stingy defense. But then when you tell them, like, okay, you're going to get great defense, but Michael Ciani's playing center field, which means Brendan Donovan, Alec Burleson, somebody's not in the lineup. Well, I don't want that. All-out palm runs from Nolan Gorman, balling strikeouts. Well, that's terrible. We're going to go offensive heavy, just make contact, get on the base paths, run crazy, move the runners over. Well, that's great, but we want to see more home runs. Like, it feels like fans just want to see all three things hit at once, which, I mean, would make you a powerhouse. And if one doesn't click, well, then it's, well, wait a minute. That's not the way that you're supposed to be developing these guys. For me personally, I don't really care about the winning. I don't even know if I want to see an identity. I want to see your young players become everyday Major League Baseball players. That's what I'm looking for. I want consistency from the guys that are supposed to be the faces of the franchise. Because to me, if the talent shows there, if the consistency shows there, the winning's going to come. But you can't start the winning without having the pillars that you're trying to build around. And that's why wins don't matter to me. Consistency doesn't matter. Power doesn't matter. I just want to see Walker, Gorman, Wynn, these guys continue to develop.
I think there is a kind of way that the Cardinals fans would like to see this team win. I do. And I don't think it's good enough to just a solid level. Like that 2019 team, 2018 team, the one that won, yes. People didn't buy into that team. They viewed it as fraudulent. They thought it was, okay, cool, yeah, they made it to the NLCS. We're not even going to sell out Busch Stadium because none of us believe they're going to do anything. And they were right. They were 100% correct about how they viewed that baseball team. I always go back to the 2013 team for me because they won 97 games and they ended up going to the World Series. We don't have to talk about what happened when they got there, but it was a really fun club. It was a really good baseball team, and from top to bottom, they just had so many dudes that were just good quality hitters, man. Yachty, what he was able to do offensively that year. Alan Craig, Matt Carpenter. I felt like that was peak Matt Carpenter. That was the 55 double season. He ended up 318 on the season. Like, it's just ridiculous the way that he was able to help them perform. Matt Holliday was really good. John Jay was clutch. Carlos Beltran was amazing. Matt Adams really kind of came onto the scene that year. He just, top to bottom, that club was full of clutch performers that were just good overall players. So what made that team special? Well, kind of what I was just talking about. And I think this plays into what Cardinals fans want to see. I think Cardinals fans, maybe more than most fan bases in Major League Baseball, care about batting average. Now, whether that's right or not, whether that actually matters or not, I don't really want to even have a discussion about it. But when you look at the teams that the Cardinals fans buy into, they're typically good at batting average. They hit the ball, it goes into play, and then they stand on base because they put the ball in play, not because they took a walk. That was no different for 2013. They were 4th in batting average that season. You look at what they do defensively, right? They were 4th fewest errors that season. They played really quality defense as a roster. They were 5th in team ERA. They had really good pitching that season. You look at what they did in stolen bases, that's actually not part of the criteria for the 2013 Cardinals. They sucked at stealing bases because they weren't built that way.
I remember that team being pretty slow.
Yeah.
They were slow. The guy that led the team in stolen bases that season, any guesses? 2013. Who do you guys think led the Cardinals in stolen bases that year?
It's going to be awesome if this is Yachty.
No, it's not Yachty.
Yachty was tied for 4th.
Why am I not remembering some of the players on that one?
Oh, was it Wong? No, he came up
wasn't
late.
there yet.
Yeah, he got picked off in the World Series. I don't know who it was. It Borges? Was he on the team?
No, that was later as well.
Dang.
John Jay led the team with how many stolen bases that year?
11.
18.
10.
10
stolen bases.
I don't think he ever got to 15.
Second on the team was a tie between Matt Holliday and Daniel Descalso with 6.
Matt.
So the reason that I bring this up is because this was not a team that stole bases. They were not a threat on the base paths, and Cardinals fans loved the 2013 Cardinals, but they were 2nd in doubles. So they could manufacture their ability to get to second base by putting that damn ball in play and getting to second with 55 doubles from Matt Carpenter. 44 of them from Yadier Molina that season. They got 30 from a couple of guys, Matt Holliday and Carlos Beltran. Like, this was a team that had a different kind of slug. They had 0 players with at least 25 home runs that season. It was just a really well-rounded, good overall baseball team. What do Cardinals fans want to see? That. They want to see batting average. They want to see good defense. They want to see good pitching. Just a well-rounded baseball club. That's really hard to construct. It's like the hardest thing that you can do as a baseball manager is trying to recreate the 2013 Cardinals. It's way easier to go out there and get sluggers and get dudes that chase strikeouts. It's really hard to reconstruct the 2013 Cardinals. It might just be a thing of the past, but that's the way that this team can get fans back on board.
And this is where I feel like I'm pulling on the opposite rope for both the Cardinals and the Blues of more modern baseball. I don't know if you'd call it modern hockey, but I think the Blues need a star when I feel like they're trying to build pack mentality.
That's
again.
where I was just going to go.
I look at the Cardinals and like when we ask the question, does it matter how they win? No, because but I think here in Cardinals Nation it does. For me, it wouldn't. If they're winning, I'm going to buy into it. But I do have an idea of what I think that identity should be. And it would be a team that mashes. So I want a team that slugs. I want a pitching staff that, sure, they have a low ERA. You know why they have that low ERA? Because they're not relying on defense. They are just swing and miss stuff consistently, strikeout stuff. No more of the Michaelis and Fetties in the rotation. We're getting the Grays, baby. We're getting the bullpen that's awesome like they had this past year that when it was right, it wasn't just getting guys out, it was striking guys out.
But what comes with that normally? Walks.
Sure.
And Cardinals fans don't like walks.
Sure.
They don't like watching it. It's not good baseball a lot of the time. The Cardinals have chased those strikeouts, and a lot of the time it comes with the walks, and that's when even with Ryan Helsley, there's a little bit of a skepticism with Helsley that I can feel when we talk about him with just the casual fans out there because, yeah, Helsley's great until he's not. Until he starts walking a bunch of guys, and then suddenly his slider's not there one day, and then, yeah, he throws 100, but where's it going? And it gets hit occasionally. So it's one of those things that I just don't know if there's a great answer for this. I think it can be a little bit different for everybody, but a lot of teams want to recreate what previously they saw work, and I don't know if that's something that works in modern day baseball.
I feel like it's something simple to where I think Cardinals fans aren't going to be happy until they see a star emerge on this team.
That's part of it as well. For sure.
I don't think this fan base will be happy until they see this team develop a star, whether it's on the pitching side or the hitting side. And until that, they're going to keep wanting more.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, joins us next.
Hey, how about this review from Ruby for Classic Air Care? Mike Stein and his entire team, service professionals and office staff members, were kind, caring, professional, and treated me as a valued customer. They addressed all my concerns, and I will forever be grateful and continue to have them service my new HVAC system for the years to come. That's the kind of service you can expect from Classic Air Care. That is the kind of service that they expect of their employees, and that is front and center to the culture of their organization. So whether it's your heating unit, your air conditioning unit, you're curious about air quality in the house, you want to just shop for filters and have filters shipped to your house so you never have to worry about going to the store and buying them again. It's all there. You can book appointments online. You can get a new quote on an HVAC unit. So if you're having some issues and that house isn't comfortable right now, it's too cold in certain areas, the heater's blowing, but it's not blowing efficiently for you, get online at Classic Air Care. Let them take care of you the way they took care of Ruby and thousands of others. Check out their 4.8 Google rating online. It's Classic Air Care. Get them online at classicaircare.com.
Live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios. This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by Chris Kerber. He's the voice of the Blues. He joins us each and every week here on BK and Ferrario. Kerbs, appreciate the time as always, man. Blues last night lose at home against the Vegas Golden Knights in what was really just a frustrating game. They didn't have their best game the first two periods, and by the time that they really started getting any sort of traction, it was already too late. What was your biggest takeaway from that one?
Well, you know, BK, my takeaway from that one is the same as my takeaway from, some of the recent losses. There are some losses, and losses are going to happen. There are some that are more frustrating than others. And the ones that are frustrating are the ones where you feel like you're ready to take that next step and see more. Look, if you lose that game 3-2, 2-1, and it was just an end-to-end battle, and you saw kind of the energy, you saw the style of game that you wanted to see, they're like, okay, we just had a split in a home and home with the Vegas Golden Knights. 8 or 9 times out of 10, you're going to take that. Unfortunately, it feels heavier because of the situation the Blues are in the standings, where they don't have the ability to afford certain losses. I look at two teams there, one that still has the majority of their championship pedigree right there, having just won the Cup 2 summers ago, that knew how to get right back to it, having lost 4 straight. And then I looked at the St. Louis Blues, who are still a team that hasn't figured out how to consistently bring the same effort and the same care of details night in, night out. And that's why they've remained an inconsistent team this year. So in some ways, not surprising, but because you're hoping for different, it is disappointing.
Kerbs, we played the clip earlier in the show of Joey kind of talking about the body language from some of your top players, and I'm just curious your take on it when you see the frustration spilling over on the ice after plays from the top guys. What are your takeaways?
It's an interesting topic, Alex. One that I've talked to a lot of people about over a good number of years. There's a couple things to it. One. Does it matter to some players? No. Is it kind of some psychoanalytical stuff from media and maybe fans? Yes. But at the same time, there are certain realities to it. And one of the realities from some players that I've talked to, both past and present, to be honest with you, is message that it sends. One, it shows that, like for last night, it could show the Vegas Golden Knights that, we're getting to them, we're stifling them, and it actually is motivation for the other team. Like, keep it up, boys. You see the guy slam his stick on the board. You see the banner reader. You see him break his stick, right? And we're getting to him. Let's keep it going. So it serves as a motivating factor for the other team. Internally, it just depends. I don't know that it's going to frustrate a veteran player as much, but it could sure send a message to a younger player the same thing, like, they're getting to us. So that psychology works both ways. And look, I can – you see some of that frustration coming through, and it's an outward expression of emotion, and you totally understand it. I don't think it's coming from a guy who doesn't care or somebody saying, it's kind of fake. It's fake frustration. No, but I do think that as part of the growth into becoming a leader or something, you've got to be able to show that you've got control of those emotions. Because really what the St. Louis Blues needed yesterday was not shown frustration. They needed somebody going, guys, we're a goal away here from being right in this thing, like, let's go, and that type of motivation. And I think that's just continued part of the growth and why you still see some inconsistencies there, because they're still growing to do as professional players for some of these guys.
Kerbs, it feels like Robert Thomas specifically is kind of going through it right now. You can add Pavel Buchnevich to that group, but Buch's struggles, I think, kind of almost stem from the start of the regular season, where he was moved over to center, and now we're still seeing some of those. What would you pinpoint as being the biggest issue right now for Robert Thomas specifically?
Boy, that's a great question. Having not really had this conversation with him, I think kind of like a lot of the other players, just the consistency of it. I think there was a really good start to his season, like on faceoffs, things like that. And then, as the team struggled with Wayne, he's put pressure on himself there. I know this, BK, that, for the Blues to get to the next step, a lot swings with Robert Thomas. It should swing with him. You've got the contract, you've got the position, you've got a leadership role, but you're a number one centerman right now in the National Hockey League. And we're seeing a player, and it's just his second full season truly as that number one centerman, right? Remember, he took over the spot, after the Blues traded Ryan O'Reilly. Then there's last year, and there's this year. And with that comes, continued growth and continued growing pains, for a player that's in, year 7 in the National Hockey League. So, for me with Robert Thomas, if you see that consistent where he's winning some of those gritty puck battles and takeaways in the defensive zone, more holds in the offensive zone, and maybe, less desperation plays to the middle of the ice that are getting deflected or tipped away, and, turnovers, things like that. A little more control over that game, I think, is where you'll see the team start to go on a run. Whether it's him, whether it's Pavel Buchnevich, whether it's Brandon Saad, I think at some point there's got to be a look at the defensive grouping here as well. If you're going to be fair to everybody on this team, you need more consistent play out of your top veteran players. And we're talking guys that have been in the league 5, 6, 7 years, and those are veteran players. They're the ones that have the lead with the consistency, emotionally, physically, on the ice, off the ice, work ethic, pace, all that stuff Jim Montgomery's talking about. And to me, a guy like Robert Thomas is one of the leaders of that pack, because that position is so critical to the hockey team. And with that comes the pressure, but that's the reality of the business, I guess.
Kerbs, one thing this season that I kind of always fall back on, and I believe you and I had this conversation on one of the post-game shows this season, was Doug Armstrong comparing this Blues team to that 2010, 2011, 2012 Blues teams. Kind of that stretch that they were in where they went from Davis Payne to Ken Hitchcock, and then they started to open up that competitive window. If you were to look at that team in 2011, 2012 when Ken Hitchcock took over, and I think they went on to win like 97 of 138 points when Hitch took over, compared to this Blues team this season, what stands out to you as the difference?
You know what, to be honest with you, Alex, I don't know that whole lot stands out as the difference. I think when it comes to a coaching change and the message being the same of, I know I'm bringing in a good coach, so if things don't happen, I know it's going to be on the players. I don't know if there's a whole lot different. I just know that there's a whole lot similar. And the only thing that's holding the St. Louis Blues back right now is the things that we were just talking about with the previous two questions of consistency night in and night out. And you get to a point where you're like, okay, you're tired of those ups and downs, and they start to bring it. And you get bad habits that have crept in over the last year and a half to 2 years for this team. It doesn't flush out immediately. And it shows you how fragile the culture of winning is and how you have to slowly build and grind and chip away. And eventually that second game in a row, that third game in a row, then there's a belief system that comes into this. I think what you saw with Ken Hitchcock, if I dig deep enough to try and find a difference, he forced a style of play that to the key line, you used to have that unconscious line of Oshie, Steen, and Backus, and they played it a certain way, similar to what you're starting to see with Shen, Kyrou, and Holloway now. And it's once that line would get going, the others would go to follow. Well, this current team needs more people on board following it. Because, guys, I'm telling you, I looked at those lineups last night, and I don't see a Las Vegas – yes, I see Jack Eichel with probably more polished high-end skill, 10-year veteran in the league, and some things like that. I see a little more offensive ability in their defense and a couple of their defensemen. But, if I'm comparing the bottom six of those two teams, I'm not sure you're not taking the St. Louis Blues bottom six over what Vegas had last night. If you just had to swap them out all together, the difference is simply execution of your top players in the top six, and that is something the St. Louis Blues need. Now, real quick, I'm kind of jumping off that question a little bit there, Alex. I do think at some point in time, this veteran defensive group has got to be able to shut things down more. They really do. There's a ton of experience. There's a ton of veterans. They were the veteran defensemen that were turning the puck over. The plays weren't clean coming out of the zone last night. That's a big factor. And the challenge is the Blues just haven't been able to have the whole team going and put it together for a stretch of a few games. So, at some point in time here, we've spent a lot of time with Thomas, Buchnevich, Kyrou, the forwards. I think this is a defensive group that's got to find another gear.
Kerbs, we appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoy yourself this weekend. Have a very good weekend, and we'll talk with you again next week, my man.
All right, guys, we've got Blues Hall of Fame tonight with Curtis Joseph and Wayne Babich and Jimmy Roberts being inducted in. That'll be a great ceremony at the MAC, and then a pregame ceremony honoring those Hall of Famers tomorrow night. So get down to the arena, get in your seats early, and we'll have some fun with a 6 o'clock face-off tomorrow night.
Should be a fun one. Blues versus the Dallas Stars tomorrow. You'll hear full coverage, of course, right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. That's Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues. He joins us each and every week on BK and Ferrario. Typically on Wednesdays, moved it over to Friday this week. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll hit the rewind, but coming up next, we got to get to our NFL weekend look ahead. Only 2 games to preview, so we'll dive headfirst into those next here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, the Blues lost to the Vegas Golden Knights by a score of 4-2. They're back in action tomorrow night at Enterprise Center, welcoming in the Dallas Stars. Pre-game show right here on 101 ESPN starts at 5, and then puck drop is at 6. Before that Blues game tomorrow, we'll have the college basketball action for you starting at noon, and then on Sunday, you can hear both the NFC and AFC championships beginning at 1 o'clock. If you missed anything from today's show, make sure to check out the podcast at 101ESPN.com or from the free 101 mobile app. I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. E&B Granite, Bernie Fedurko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Let's get into our NFL weekend look ahead. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. 2 games this weekend, just 2. And the NFL Champ Bash is coming up on Sunday. Check out the full details for that on 101ESPN.com. They're going to be at Hot Shots this weekend. The Riz Show, Fastlane. They'll be performing the Riz Show's Punishment from the Pick'em Challenge this week. Alex and T-Bone will be out there as well. So if you want to have a couple of beers with all the guys, you can do that this weekend. Check out all the details at 101ESPN.com. It starts 2 o'clock, Alex. Commanders going to Philly to take on the Eagles. Eagles are a 6-point favorite at home. That feels about right to me. You know how much I love the Commanders, and I picked them to get here. I personally believe that road ends here. I think the Eagles' defense is going to prove to be too much. I think they had some advantageous matchups in the first couple of rounds against both Tampa and Detroit. I think the Eagles' defense is ultimately what wins this game for them, even if I have real questions about what their offense is going to do. How is your top line feeling going into this game between the Commanders and Eagles?
I think the Commanders get it done. I think they win. I think Jaden Daniels becomes the first rookie ever to win 3 playoff games.
Wow.
I hear what you're saying, and you're right. The Eagles' defense is great, but I think Jaden Daniels is better. And I don't know if the Eagles are going to have that same ability to have the pressure on him like they did against Stafford and the Rams, because Jaden Daniels, when we saw in the previous game, when he was blitzed, Jaden Daniels was actually better than when he was just waiting for things to happen. So I think this kid knows how to handle pressure. I think that offense is going to be able to at least stay in the same game with Philly. The question's going to be, if Washington stops Saquon Barkley, what else do they have? And that's where I do not trust this team. I don't trust Sirianni. I don't trust Jalen Hurts. If they don't have Saquon Barkley, which I guarantee you Washington is finding a way to game plan for Saquon, how do they adapt? Because Jaden Daniels can adapt. How does Philly adapt? And I don't trust it. So that's why I would take the Commanders +6.
And I like the Eagles in this one because I don't think they can stop Saquon. I mean, they had the 3rd worst rushing defense in the NFL in the regular season. I thought they were going to have troubles with that against Tampa Bay with Irving in that first wild card game, but I still like them. I think if they can't stop the run, they have no chance in this football game. And I think they will put up a decent amount of points. I could see where the Commanders get to 17. I don't know if your defense is going to be able to stop the running game and keep Saquon from getting to his feet. I mean, I think his over-under is 110 yards or something crazy.
That actually feels low.
For rushing, yeah.
Which is absurd.
But I just don't see how they stop him. I think the Eagles' defense is going to be able to slow down the Commanders, and if they can slow down the Commanders' offense, I think that's going to be enough for them to come out of here with a victory.
That's my thing, man. The Commanders getting here is already such an unbelievable victory for them. Just getting to the NFC Championship game at this point, the best part of that is you now know. You have no more questions, and so for the next 3 seasons, while you're still on this cheap rookie cost-controlled contract for Jaden Daniels, you could throw every resource at winning as much as humanly possible because you have no questions about your quarterback, whereas a bunch of these other teams, they have to go into year 2 and 3 wondering, are we doing the right thing by really pushing? Like, if you're the Commanders and you want to go spend a first-round pick this offseason to get him a true go-to guy or a legit number one pass rusher, like, you want to really invest in your team, now is the time to do so while you still have that ability to build around Jaden Daniels. So it's not all is lost if you end up losing this game, but I do think they will ultimately end up losing this game. The late game, Chiefs versus the Buffalo Bills. Alex, the Chiefs and the refs are a 2-point home favorite in this one.
Only 2 points for the refs. Wow.
It is, yeah. It's only a 2-point favorite in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs.
They must know something.
How do you feel about this one? What are your vibes?
I don't know, man.
About 48 hours away.
I find myself in the same line of thinking that you guys were earlier in the show. Like, I think the Bills do this one, but every time I want to sit there and say it with my chest, I'm like, yeah, but they've got Mahomes, Kelsey, and Andy Reid on the other side. I'm going to stick with my gut, though, and go with the fact that this feels like it's the Buffalo Bills season. It feels like the year that they finally get over that hump, that you get to the Super Bowl, because Kansas City, although they still have the GOAT on the other side, they do feel like a wounded animal. And Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills feel like they feel inevitable. And it's really going to come down to who makes the biggest mistake in that football game. Does Josh Allen throw an interception? Does he fumble a football? Because we've seen that happen in the past. But if he can stay perfect, I think the Buffalo Bills have the better team than Kansas City.
I agree.
You would think I'd learn my lesson.
That part I agree with.
You would think I'd learn my lesson from all the years of picking against Tom Brady. Like, that Patriots team, now they can't keep getting away with this. I'm going to go against him, and he would win. I'm going to do it again, though. I think the Bills get it done. Look, they've went up against some really good run defenses, and they've had no problem running the football. BK brought that up earlier this week. James Cook's been great. Josh Allen's been using the legs. And I think the most important part, and I agree with you, what happens when you play the Kansas City Chiefs? You typically beat yourself, especially over the last year and a half, I would say. Because this Chiefs team, last year's Chiefs team, offensively just don't do it for me, right? They do a good enough job. They take care of the football. They get their points. But if you get them to where you are doing everything correct offensively, you will outscore the Kansas City Chiefs, because I do not think they are capable of getting into a shootout. Now, I'm not saying Buffalo's going to score 30 in this game. I think if they score 24, I think you put Kansas City away.
I think 25 is the number. Whoever scores 25 wins.
And I think the Bills are going to do that. And I think it comes down to they're going to run the football, they're going to play sound defense, and the most important part is they are not going to kill themselves. I've seen Josh Allen this year, and he's doing so much better job of making the smart decisions, not turning the football over, and I think that's going to be the ultimate difference maker. I don't think he turns the football over. I think there might be one turnover on the Chiefs, and that's the thing that does it. I've got Buffalo winning this one.
Chiefs have an NFL record 8 consecutive games without a turnover. The Bills have turned it over once in their last 8 games. So combined between them, they have played 16 games over the last 8 weeks, and they have exactly 1 turnover to show for it offensively. If you want to learn the theme from this playoff, it's don't beat yourself. Wait for the other team to make the big mistake and then capitalize on it, and boom, that is how you win in the postseason. That is what the Chiefs have done. That is what the Bills have done. Look at what the Commanders just did last week against the Detroit Lions. Look at what the Eagles were able to do. Capitalize on your opponent's mistakes. Don't make any of your own. It's so incredibly simple, but that is the formula that wins in the postseason, and it is showing up once again this year. I trust Patrick Mahomes to avoid those critical mistakes more than I trust Josh Allen to avoid them. I think the Bills, like you do, Alex, I think they are a slightly better football team. What I will be very curious about in this game, if you want to get nerdy real quick for just a moment, the Bills love going with their big personnel. Love it. They've been going with that extra offensive lineman, throwing multiple tight ends on the field. And what it does is it forces the opposition to go with their big personnel as well. So you throw out an extra defensive tackle. You take off a corner. You throw out that third linebacker to get yourself in base defense. Take off another corner or a safety. And then they run it right down your throat. It's what they did last week against the Ravens. It's what they did 2 weeks ago against the Denver Broncos. Here's the thing that I find to be interesting. That is playing right into the Chiefs' hands. The Chiefs have been bad the second half of the season against the run because they've had so many teams that are going into these 3 wide receiver sets, so they're spreading them out, taking Leo Chanel, their best run-stuffing linebacker, off of the field because you have to put a corner in that spot. They're taking off their best run-stuffing defensive tackle and replacing him with Turk Wharton, who's like 6 foot, 275. He's an interior rusher, not a guy that's going to get in there and really plug the middle. So when these other teams have done that, they've had success running the football. The Bills have been attacking with the opposite way. They've been going big and attacking with big bodies. Well, that plays right into the Chiefs' hands. So this weekend, what are the top storylines that I'll be watching early on in this game? How do the Bills attack in the running game? Do they go back to their spread formations, or do they continue to go big and potentially keep ramming their head into a brick wall, which is the Chiefs' defense when they go up against those kinds of offenses? That is going to be one of the key storylines going into this game on Sunday. All right, with Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Those are our two games that we have to preview going into this upcoming weekend. We'll give you a couple more thoughts on those before we get out of here. Plus, championship weekend predictions, Blues takeaways from the past game and what we expect from them going into this weekend, and a couple of interesting basketball games this weekend as well. All in the Rewind coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios. This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Let's run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Anything from today's show, be sure to check out the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
It's a little different when you get it from both of us, huh? I heard your line yesterday where you just decided to do it.
Well, I tossed it to myself, and it is very difficult to alley-oop to yourself. Yeah. I'm not giving you any credit. I'm just saying I didn't handle that well, and frankly, I didn't give enough credit to T-Bone, who could handle that. So that's on me.
101 ESPN's app is presented always by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. All right, to hit the rewinds today, let's finish up where we began with the Blues, the loss last night. We can kind of put a bow on this game, Alex, and then kind of start to preview tomorrow night's game between the Blues and the Dallas Stars. It's just a terrible one. It's one that you put in the toilet and flush it down and hope that it doesn't creep back into your game. Unfortunately, it feels like it has.
Yeah,
it feels like this has become a recurring theme for them where that top line just – and I call them the top line only because that's what they once were. They're not anymore. That second line with Thomas and Booch just is not performing at a level that they need them to right now.
Yeah, I think right now they're labeled as your shutdown line. And if they're not your shutdown line, then what are they? And that's their problem right now. Do I think Thomas and Booch are going to get out of this rut? Absolutely, because I think they're great players. But right now, Robert Thomas is the third worst player in terms of even strength goal differential on your team, and Pavel Buchnevich is your sixth worst. It's very evident your top line is Braden Shen, Dylan Holloway, and Jordan Kyrou. That's your top offensive line. You don't have a shutdown line. And if you don't have a shutdown line, it's going to be very difficult for you to pull out games. And I think that was an ugly game. I think the Blues have had plenty of ugly games this season. But as we played yesterday, BK, the Eddie Olczyk cut from the Winter Classic, the task for a team that's trying to get into the playoffs is limit the damage. And if they go out there and beat Dallas on Saturday, then you're just this 500 team. That's always going to be in the race because everybody in this final spot is fighting for it, but you need that line to be your shutdown line once again.
They've got to eventually go on a run. I just don't know that they're capable of doing it right now. And the time is running out prior to the deadline. We've always used that as not just a deadline for trades, but also a deadline of sorts to find out what this team is. And they might just be this. Yeah. This might just be a 500 team, and I think that becomes a really difficult spot if you're Doug Armstrong because then you have to decide, what do I do? Yeah. Do I continue to provide more resources for this 2025 club, or do I hold? Or another option, do I sell? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a conversation for a different day. They do play the Dallas Stars tomorrow night. You'll hear full coverage right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. What's the number one thing you're looking for in that one, Alex?
Honestly, it's going to be offense. What do they do with that line of Thomas and Buchnevich? I'd really like to see Zach Bolduc play up there. I'd like to see Neighbors drop down with Sundqvist and Matthew Joseph, reunite the WTF line, and see if you can get some offense. But honestly, what Kerb said, they got to tighten up defensively. I think the defense has played really good for you. They've been generating a lot of offense, and you've been a stingier team in even strength, but it's taken a step back with 3 straight games of allowing 4+ goals.
All right, T-Bone, on Sunday we have championship weekend. Commanders at the Eagles, Bills at the Chiefs. Let's go through, give our picks, both straight up and against the spread. Eagles are a 6-point home favorite against the Commanders. Who you got in this one, T-Bone?
I got the Eagles winning it. I think they will cover the spread. I think they win by a touchdown.
That's what I've got as well. Alex?
Commanders, I think they win it straight up, but I'll take them +6 also.
All right, and then in the late game, Bills versus Chiefs. Chiefs at home, 2-point favorite. I'm going to take the Chiefs. I do think they end up covering that spread, although I think it's a really close game. I think it's a 3-point favorite for me for the Chiefs, but that'll cover things. What do you have in this one, T-Bone?
I think the Bills will win. I think this is the year they get over the top. I think the Chiefs are too flawed, and I don't think the Bills are that way. I think they win. If you do like the Chiefs, though, I do think they will win by more than 2. So I would go with the spread then.
24-21 final score, Buffalo Bills.
You should be betting on a little 2-game parlay. Bills and the Commanders.
First
Got some
of all,
good money to be made.
Don't
there.
insult me with those 2-game parlays. There's typically about like 17 parlays. But yes, you're right. There will be a large bet placed before Sunday evening.
Mizzou has a big one this weekend against Ole Miss. Would really like to see them rebound in that one after losing against Texas on the road. Illinois should win against Northwestern. And then SLU with a game this weekend. Basically their final tune-up game against George Washington. They've got VCU and Dayton next week. SLU, number 1 defense in the A-10 so far through conference play. It's going to be a one-bid league. They got to continue having success, and really it just comes down to what they do in their tournament. For Tanner Hendrickson and Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. Huge shout-out to Jordan Deacon, who did a fantastic job for us today as we've been broadcasting out at the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. I'm off all week next week. Alex and T-Bone will have you taken care of, though. You guys have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you soon here on BK and Ferrario.